Hi guys, and welcome to the Gin and Tonic Show. We help Muslims and non-Muslims alike to understand and handle Islam in the 21st century. We consider ourselves to be decent human beings, so we condemn categorically any abuse, oppression, misogyny, slavery, violence, anything like that. We do embrace, however, free speech and also criticism, even if it is directed at us, if it is factual and constructive criticism. We focus on Islam exclusively. So if you're curious about anything Islam, you've come to the right place. Now, we don't attack, which is aggressive, destructive, and antagonistic, neither Islam nor Muslims. We ask questions and show facts. We refute false claims and present the reality of Islam, which is political Islam. We inspect, investigate, research, analyze, and then report and critique on Islam, the ideology, not the people. Now, the live stream goes to YouTube and Facebook, and there are three ways that you can participate in this. Either you join us in the live written chat, you can join the panel during the live show, or later on watch and comment the archive. And anyone can join to comment, critique, contribute, or question. This is not a Dawah channel with censorship. Don't go to Patreon, don't go to PayPal. Everything here is free. The way we work is usually we have some news, some Krazy Komments, a segment where we go and read the Koran, and then a discussion on the theme of the month, followed by integrating the live chat, ending with a Hadith of the week. And there, if this is not enough Islam for you, there's still the Discord channel where you can discuss with us without anything being recorded. See you later and enjoy the Gin and Tonic Show. There you go. Hello everybody. Hello people in the chat. People, hey, good morning. People here on the panel. People everywhere in the world, wherever you are, wherever you may be, and wherever you are watching. Hello, Mustafa. How are you doing this beautiful evening?
This evening, at least in the Canadian northern side of the world, is dark, gray, windy, snow. So I don't think it's a lovely evening. I'm not sure about your part of the world. So hello, everybody. Hello.
No, it's a balmy 6 degrees here. Come on, what do you mean? But it's quite pleasant. It's nice. It's okay.
All right.
And Rob, Mr. Speaker, sir.
Good evening. Stops and Mustafa. Good evening, everybody. Yep, it's a cold, one of the few days when we've got a clear sky. I did a quick night shot with a phone. It's amazing what the phones can do these days. So Jupiter and Saturn are close by. Took a quick shot of that. But other than that, looking forward to a show. Let's see what we've got in store tonight. I've posted the show in a few of the Discord servers. One of them deleted their post for no apparent reason. But again, we've come to expect that from some of the Muslim servers. They're delete and ban happy there. So, yeah. But we aren't like that here, so there we go.
So, hello, wonderful people in the chat. Yeah, we're going to have a fun show today because we're going to be looking at another installment of our favorite character, Nadir, to see what he is up to in a different debate environment. We're going to... I don't know. I'm just a good actor. Then we're going to look at...
We've got our favorite Muslim here as well. Hopefully he'll learn something tonight. I mean, it doesn't look like he's learned much over the last time, but we can always be hopeful, huh? Come on, Abdel. Try and learn. Open that brain. I know it's challenging, but it's like going to the gym. If you just exercise that muscle, it'll do wonders for you.
Yeah, we hope so. Okay, then what we're going to do is we're going to start off with the news segment. I'm keeping it relatively crisp today because the video we're going to have to split into two parts anyway, minimum, because there's so much, so I'm trying to get there relatively quickly. So what we're going to have is the news segment. I've got three short items because in France, again, France is turning out to be like a leader. It used to be Austria, but I think now France is jumping ahead because Muslims are under pressure to sign a French values charter. Now, this is amazing. All right, and this is something that I think we're going to see more of in the future, I think. Because the CFCM, the council, which represents 9 separate Muslim associations, I don't know why Muslims always require so much representation. I don't know why there's so many Muslim councils in all the different countries.
Well,
Anyway,
I can kind of answer that. Being part of the community before, it's also because there's some, even within the same sect, there will be different divisions as well amongst the councils. So it will be something like, even with the Jafari Shia Muslims, there's going to be a center mainly run by one Afghani family, one Pakistani family, another center. So it's kind of a bit of internal politics. So that's the best way I could describe it or summarize.
Okay, thank you for that. Yeah, it makes sense. Anyway, so these associations have been asked to include the text of the recognition of France's republican values, a rejection of Islam as a political movement, and a ban on foreign influence. And this has been sent to the imams and the mosques, and this is something that they're going to have to sign. And I think this is quite good, because it forces, well, not Islam, but it forces Muslims to acknowledge 2 things. That number one, that Islam does have a political component to it. And number 2, that this is interfering with the political values that you have in the host country. And this is something that needs to be done in different countries. I think that the political Islam segment of Islam is abandoned, abolished, or I don't know what you want to do with it, what you want to call it. Because if we keep just the religious component, I don't care if a Muslim wants to pray to a god, if a Muslim believes that they will attain a salvation or go to heaven or whatever, I don't care. Everybody can believe what they want to believe. But you can't get to decide what my legal rights are in a country that is not an Islamic country. And this is the problem, where Muslims are demanding that everything be halal, that everything be this and this and this. And no, I don't want that. And this is why I think this is a good move, that France is forcing the hand here. And I think we're going to see this more. Now, the next one is quite funny, because remember, Muslims are highly organized. And this is one of there's a lot of positive things in Islam as well. The social component is one of them. And the way that Muslims are organized, they use apps which connect them to their groups, to their mosque, to their madhab, to their whatever it is. So they constantly get messages, and they are fully integrated into these groups. This is brilliant. I mean, I think I love it, because I see how many people, especially over Christmas, especially single people, especially during a pandemic, are suffering like crazy because they are alone. And this does not happen to you if you're a Muslim, and this is brilliant. Now, unfortunately, these apps are being tapped. So the ACLU has now filed a request over data in the data that has been collected just in the US via these Muslim apps, and these are used by millions and millions of Muslims. So they say harvesting of data on Muslim app users worldwide is a serious threat to privacy and religious freedom. And this is what the ACLU says. So they're worried because, of course, the Muslims, like if they're organized, they have contact to EF Dawah and, and to people like that. So they are then connected to people in Malaysia and in Australia. So this is really a global movement. And this is why there's a lot of data in these apps. And now the ACLU is looking into this. Now, in Belgium, I don't know if you remember the Islamist attacks 4 years ago. Now, the people and the teachings were traced to a specific mosque in Brussels. And now the Belgian government has refused permission for the Grand Mosque in the EU quarter of Brussels to be, again, recognized as, the local faith community, that as a place of worship has been infiltrated, and at the moment by Moroccan spies. And this is why this financial aid and all these things have been withheld from this particular mosque.
Oh, that is very surprising, actually. Like you have, specifically Moroccan spies infiltrating this mosque in Brussels. That is news to my ears.
Yeah. Well, this is why it's called news. This is new. Yeah. All right. The number one news item is this. Because this is so nice. Thinking made this. He took the head of. Oh, you can't see the mouse. The head of my mother, which this month it's gone. So I did this in the month of November because I was challenged. I don't know if you remember that I was able to publicly use the head of my mother, and Thinking has done exactly that. He's made a cartoon out of that. And in case you can't read it, at the bottom it says, "Stop's mom is waiting at home for his return." Okay, like living in the basement with my parents. And it says, "Knock, knock on the door." And then, "Coming late." The first one is just, I don't know what this is, a branding iron or something, just to hit me over the head. Then you have this cake roller pin thing, if I'm coming home drunk. And then the last one is a shotgun, "Coming home from the gin and tonic show." So this is quite funny, I thought.
Very mean-spirited. I mean, like, and this is not the first one I saw against you. There's another one I saw, something similar, but it was a lot more sexual. Armin Navabi, something about Armin Navabi when he drew the Muhammad and the goddess Kali having BDSM, insert S word here. So I think they posted something similar to this. So I've been looking at, when the prophet of gods get attacked, it's like they just attack you personally. It's like because they have nothing to attack.
Okay, I don't even I know of this. I haven't heard this.
Huh.
So
yeah, I'll send you. I'll find it and I'll send you something similar, if I find it. That is.
What have I done? I'm a few minutes behind. It's being broadcast here in Speakers Corner UK at the same time. What's the story? Yeah, I set
I
it up
think
so
you
that
sent
it's
it to my channel by mistake. It's no worries.
Oh, it should go to Facebook.
Yeah, it's going to Facebook, but it should go to the Speakers Corner Facebook group as well. So
Yes.
it's all good. Carry on.
Okay, you cancelled this already. Okay, thanks. Okay, so the first, what is quite funny, I found some data here because Dawah was tanking, and you can see that the subscribers from the beginning of the month, there was an updraft or upkick in May sometime, but then it's been going downhill for Dawah, and I think this is why he opened up this Hamza's Den, which in the beginning did very well. Then it went downhill because people were not interested. And now because he's, I think, increased the frequency and gone more controversial with more drama, now it's picking up again. So I don't know what else he's going to do. So this should be quite interesting to watch this in 3 months or so to see how this is progressing. So it's quite funny. Okay, Krazy Comment. I made a video where I showed that the claim of embryology in the Quran is totally ridiculous, stupid, overblown, and blah, blah, blah. And I provided the evidence for this. And this guy, Kepeting Rebus, whatever, "No, you did not prove anything. Your so-called evidence are just potatoes." I think he's watching Christian Prince. "Moore is a professor and you are a big mouth. Potato." Okay. I have clear video presentation from Keith Moore. He clearly stated Quran must be from God because embryology in Quran in line with modern science. And you are not even a scientist who has credibility in embryology. So only idiot will listen to you, and I'm an educated person who studied Keith Moore book regarding Quran embryology and find Keith Moore already proved Quran is totally correct about embryology.
goodness, this has been debunked so many times.
Okay, yeah, but I think you are not aware. How I do this is I actually go and use Keith Moore's book to show that the Quran is wrong. And he uses Keith Moore, but he says he has a YouTube video where Keith Moore says this. So in all his books, he says the opposite, but he has one YouTube video which says, yeah, everything's in line. This is what he's using. And this is what people say. This is how pathetic, how desperate they are. Now, this is a guy who comments on every single Muslim video, and it's always exactly on this level. The Quran identifies the ruler of Egypt as Pharaoh 65 times, but only in the story of Moses, peace be upon him. Well, no, that's not true. I mean, this has been debunked so many times, I can't believe it. I mean, it's actually a mistake, a serious mistake in the Quran, because they copied the mistake from the Bible, sorry, Thunder, that this is Pharaoh, or as in the name, because the people didn't realize that this is a title. They thought this is a name. So this is why they use the name all the time. And, you know, if somebody takes Moses as a baby, like, what is a pre-age toddler? What is before toddler?
Infant?
Is it an infant? I can't
Infant,
remember.
yeah, I was just trying to say it. I was muted there, infant, yeah.
Infant, then toddler. So if Moses comes to the court as an infant and then grows up, and then obviously that he is old and leaves and blah, 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 so it can't be the same Pharaoh all the time. So it needs to be two. And they didn't realize that. And the way that they make this claim that the Pharaoh is only mentioned in the story of Moses is bullshit, because it doesn't match up with the way that Pharaoh was used, and whether it uses Malik or Pharaoh doesn't really matter. It's just a matter of title. So I don't know why people still come up with this story. But this guy is amazing how he always makes mistakes like that. Hatun claims there are multiple Qurans, yet she has one Quran in her hand. Okay.
Oh dear.
Now, the funny thing is, our favorite Redbeard was standing there saying that we know that the Bible is corrupt, and you are now telling me that the Quran is corrupt too, but you have to prove your claim, so go ahead, otherwise we don't believe it. Now, the funny thing is, nobody says, yeah, but hang on, can you please prove that the Bible is corrupt? How are you going to do that? How many different Bibles have you got that show that have different contents? You don't have even one Bible. So what are you talking about? So
Yeah, but he does this all the time, doesn't he?
Yeah,
He makes
of course
big
he
claims.
does.
He's not asked to prove them. When he wants something proved, then he tries to stay on it dogmatically.
Exactly.
Hypocrite and inconsistency are just words that are synonymous with our good friend.
So silly. I wonder what kind of evidence he would accept. I mean, I've done this for 10 years and people are still dodging this. I don't know why. And now the latest is that they're always coming up with this Aruf and Qiraat. That is so silly. Like a Qiraat is a way of reading the Quran. Okay? Now, how can it have different words if it is just a way of reading it? Why do you have even... you have the Hafs version, which is the Kazim version from 1924 today, but you have the Wash version. Now, this is a different Quran. So why would you have a different Quran? Why would a God reveal a different Quran to different people and then claim it's the same thing? So even internally, you have a huge problem here, and people don't realize that. So it's quite funny. Okay, this is okay. Let me see if I can do this with a straight face. David Wood also ate a piece of the Quran, yet we still have the Quran preserved in totality, as Birmingham University shows. Your accusation is flawed.
I mean, what has David Wood eating the Quran has anything to do with that one preserved in Birmingham University?
And this is edited, so it must have been worse before. Oh my God, this is a crazy comment indeed. Now, number one,
I think there isn't any thinking going on there, is there?
The Quran is not preserved. Okay, number two, it's not in totality because we don't have the Quran in totality up until the 10th century. It doesn't exist. We have no original Quran. So you cannot compare any version of the Quran that we have against an original. So you don't know which is the original. You don't know which is the correct one. We have so many different versions and nobody knows which one is the correct one. Now, the Birmingham University one is just one example of another version, but this is late. I would put it around the 11th century or something. Because of the script, because of the way it is written, because of the dots that are being used, which didn't exist in the beginning. Plus, it shows a difference. There are two differences just on these two folios against the 1924 version, Hafs version that we have here today in general. So the whole thing is totally flawed. Plus, this is the funny thing that people, I don't know, nobody points this out. If the Birmingham folios are really dated to Muhammad's lifetime, there is a huge problem with the standard narrative because it says all other documents, all other manuscripts, all other texts, everything was destroyed by Uthman. Now that means that this should not exist. But if it does, and it is older and was not destroyed, we have a problem because now we don't know what is what. Has everything been destroyed or not? Which versions have escaped destruction? This opens up a new can of worms if you go with this claim that the Birmingham University one dates back to the Prophet.
And
I don't know why people...
And isn't that the Quranic manuscript that only has 2 or 3 chapters only?
Not even that. It's just a few sentences. It's just 2 folios with chapters 18 and 20 and just portions of it. So it's not a complete Quran or anything. It's not a complete anything.
Wow. Oh, it's not even complete.
So this is quite weird. And I'm just realizing I'm the alethophobe. Alethophobe is unwarranted fear. Alethophobia is truth, reality. So an alethophobe is somebody who cannot handle the truth or reality, and I am the anti of that. So I am the alethophobe. So I made it an anti, just in case people are wondering, because I very much cherish truth, reality, and facts, ethics, and things like that. So there you go. So that was our segment on Krazy Komments. We're doing so well in time today. Excellent stuff. So let me quickly go through, I don't know how many sentences of the Quran we're going to do, probably not too many. I did sit down and translate some, and I must admit I did it today because I was a lazy bum. No, actually I was doing the video on what's his name, Imran. And I don't know why I even spend so much time on these things, but I always think, okay, I'm just going to do a high-level one, and then it gets more intricate and more this, more this, more this. I don't even know why I do this. Here we go. All right. Can everybody read that?
Yeah, we can see it. That's good.
I can see it. Yes, I can see it.
Excellent. Now, I've only done 10 sentences. I don't know, we can stop at 5 if you want. This is chapter 8, and it's sentence 41 to 51. What I do is I just take the sentence and I shorten it, and I just take the essence of what it says, what I think it says. So this is my personal interpretation, my personal tafsir, as it were, just in a very short form. So sentence 41, and if you want to follow, you can follow along by taking the normal Quran to see what I've done. So at 41 it says, Allah wants 20% commission on what you steal. I don't know, do I need to explain this? Because Muhammad this was his income. He was a pirate. He did not work or something. He just went and stole from other people. So he attacked caravans, he attacked other settlements and things like that, and just took whatever he could. And this whole chapter is called Spoils of War. And this is why it's called Spoils of War, because if you go and go to war with somebody and you are victorious, you get some booty. And this is, excuse me, this is where Allah wants 20% commission on what you steal. Now, the funny thing is, Muhammad also wants 20%, as does his family, then the orphans, the needy, and the traveler. Then it says, Allah on everything all-powerful. And I put this is exactly what it says. Allah on everything all-powerful. Now, what are you supposed to do with a sentence like this? Allah on everything all-powerful. So you get a whole lot of interpretations now what this is supposed to mean, because if you take it literally, it doesn't make sense, does it? So we have two problems here, that we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 elements of 20%. So, you know, the war booty is 120%. Then Allah is all-powerful. Why do you need to go to war if Allah is all-powerful? Why doesn't he just stop this attack on the poor Muslims? He should be able to do that. Why would he allow anybody else to attack the poor Muslims who only want one thing, and that is peace? It's quite strange. So 42, when you were here and they were there, you would have missed them. But Allah could have. Now, Rob, do you want to bring up the original just to show people I'm not talking shit, okay? This is really what it says there. This is sentence number 42, and you can read there. When you were on the side of the valley, the nearer, they were on the other side, and the further. And the caravan was lower than you. And if you'd made an appointment, certainly you would have failed in the appointment. But that might accomplish Allah, a matter that was destined, that who destroyed on a clear evidence, and who live on clear evidence, and indeed Allah all-hearing, all-knowing.
I mean, that's obviously the corpus, so it's a word for word, isn't it? It's not going to make proper sense.
Okay, but even if you read the Sahih, look at how many brackets you need to make any kind of sense of this. But this is, you know, like when you were here and they were there, and then if you made an appointment, you would have missed it, and Allah would have done it. What was already, he could have. He might accomplish a matter already destined, that those who perished would perish, and those who lived would live, and... Okay, I
think the only thing I can get out of this is it's just reinforcing the idea of destiny. But other than that, like, you know, the sentence structure itself, it's all over the place.
Yeah. Now, of course you can. I mean, if you read this 15 times, you can get some sort of sense what they're trying to say. But it's really poorly worded and not coming across too clear. This is the whole point that I'm trying to make. Okay, 43 says there would be no fight if you dreamt there were many people. So if you dream something, that means you decide whether to fight an army or not, depending on your dream. I don't know anybody who takes decisions based on a dream, but this is what it says here. If you had shown them in your dream, you would have lost courage and would have disputed in the matter whether to fight. Okay? So depending on your dream, you fight or you don't.
It doesn't make much sense, right? Because if you if you believe in Allah, you'd know that you're going to win against all odds, presumably. If that's what He's told you, or the messenger told you, you're going to win against all odds, then you'd be encouraged, not discouraged. It seems to me. So the more they
why would He do that? Because He says He is knowing.
You'd be.
And I think this is also like you know, sort of saying that this is a sign from Allah. If you see a dream that you're fighting in a war, you're kind of like destined to fight in a war. That's how I can make sense out of this. But this is so weird.
And it says both were illusions, predestined. Okay, so if it's predestined, why would you get a dream? I mean, it doesn't matter what you do, the outcome will always be predestined. There's no difference. So if both were illusions, why worry? Why bother? Just let them do it, because the outcome is already predetermined. So what the hell? But again, I mean, it's predestined. And now it contradicts itself and says, think of Allah when you fight. What is the point of this? Why would you think of Allah when it's predestined? And then it says the 46, obey. Okay, the typical, obey the Lord, the God, and Muhammad. So 47 is an interesting one. Don't be a show-off. That's quite good. That's quite nice. And it's quite drastic. And it tells you, don't be a show off, don't be haughty, don't be this, don't be that. So this is actually quite a nice sentence. This I would put on one of the positive sides of Islam. Now the 40, this is a funny one. The devil is scared of Allah and his punishment. Now, that doesn't make any sense. That does not make any sense. If everything that is good and dandy is Allah, and if it's not, then it's the devil. So how can the devil be scared of Allah and his punishment? So this is quite strange. I don't know, do you want to read this? Remember when Satan made that he's pleasing to them, no one can overcome you today, and blah, 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 I am your protector. But when the two armies sight each other, he turns on his heels and says, indeed, I'm dissociated. I see what you do not see. Indeed, I fear Allah, and Allah is severe in penalty. Okay, I don't know.
So Satan is basically, he's basically a trickster in this.
Yeah, he's a con artist who's actually quite scared. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. 49 says non-believers are hypocrites. 50 says non-believers go to hell. Thank you very much. There's no hate speech in the Quran at all. And 51 because what they did.
Yeah, you could see when taking souls.
Mustafa, you've got to get closer to your mic there.
Right. Sorry. Can you hear me?
Yeah, now you're better.
Perfect. Yeah. No, I'm just reading this thing, and if you could see when taking away the souls of those who disbelieve the angels, striking their faces and their backs, taste the punishment of the blazing fire. So I'm guessing this is just showing like how angels punish people in hell. That's what it's stating.
But he's not unjust. But he will still punish you for what we did.
What would unjust look like? Can any Muslim explain what unjust would look like?
And even then, what is unjust and just has been, very subjective.
Yeah.
Especially if you look at it from different ethical points of view. Like, from one perspective, it's just some have an absolute sense and some have a more, accommodating point of view. I don't know. Crap, what's the word for it? It'll come to my mind. But yeah, so everybody has a very different opinion about what is just and what is not just. So, that in itself puts us in a bit of a weird situation.
Yeah, it's subjective, right? There's no methodology to undertake what is just and what isn't. And when they tried to do this the other day, and we did a review on Mosta, who's an excellent ex-Muslim, he directed me to a professor in Harvard who I'm listening to at the moment about morality and justice and so forth, going through through Locke and the English philosophers, and he's on Immanuel Kant at the moment. And he did a good job of sort of challenging them on this idea, right? And they contradicted each other as well, because one doesn't know his theology, the other doesn't know philosophy, so you've got this sort of deadly combination of the two of them, at least the two of them. The others were just talking nonsense, so there wasn't a lot there, as one might imagine, from this particular stream, but we just should have showed it. He did a pretty good job, right? A few things, like we say, that we could have tweaked, and so that when it comes to morality, these guys, just it's an utter failure for them, right? They're barely able to, give a coherent account, never mind a substantial or a valid one. I mean, those bars are much higher. But at this case, it's just to give a valid account, a coherent account that isn't self-contradictory. Mm-hmm. But all of this sort of stuff, there's no, there's no yardstick, is there? So it's entirely subjective. Or if they're going to claim that it's God, well, how do you know that what God says is good, right? And at that point, it descends into a dark pit from which they can't really seemingly get out of.
And what it says, thinking clearly too has a good point where he says...
Just get closer to the mic again there.
Sorry, can you hear me?
Yeah, even a bit closer if you can.
That's the closest I can get. So what would be unjust to Islam? Equality for non-Muslims for a start. Thinking clearly too has definitely a good point that in Islam it's sort of like division of a class system where the Muslims and the non-Muslims.
Oops.
Did you break up there? We've lost you there.
Yeah, hello?
Now you're back.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, so there are different rules that apply to non-Muslims and Muslims. And then you have specific laws for, they specifically say the people of the book, or the Christians and Jews, and, you know, you have the jizya system. You even had, during Umar's caliphate, that there were separate rules for Christians to follow in the empire. So, you know, you have a bit of, you know, with Islam as a system, it's like it doesn't present itself as a just system. And, you know, what's unjust for Islam is basically treating a non-believer as an equal. So that's a very good point by thinking clearly too. Also, yes, Musa's right arm looks bigger than his left because it's the lighting of the change room. That's all it is. And maybe I use my right arm a lot more. So thank you very much.
Okay, now comes the fun part. The guy on the left is called Nadir Ahmed, and the guy on the right is called TJump. Now, the guy on the left, they've had a chat before where we've looked at some of the stuff they've done, and now they're going into a formal debate. But now this is on a debate platform, a Muslim debate platform, and I've just checked. On this platform, there are so many channels. This IRCR Media, where I took this from. If you go to IRCR Media and you go on channels, there are so many Muslim channels. So if you're looking for somewhere, if you want to cause some, have some fun debating Muslims, there are so many. I mean, it's like 200,000 subscribers. I've never heard of the guy, Sabil Ahmed, never heard of him. No clue who this is. And yet he's got 200,000 subscribers. I mean, there's one path there with 500,000 subscribers. I can't believe it. I can't believe where they get the subscribers from. Is there anything else worth pointing out? So if you're looking for Muslims that you want to do, oh, even Muhammad Hijab is here. Ask a Muslim is here. So
nobody can see what you're looking at, Stops.
No, I can't, because I thought, let me do this, but then I'm losing this here.
All right, shall we go straight into it?
So this is this channel where I'm going. So this seems to be a Muslim debate channel, because they have lots of videos, but they're all long, and they're all long debates. So this is Nadir Ahmed and TJump, and it's on, is it a scientific miracle? I don't know why I don't know why they still do this. I don't know why they stopped doing this. Okay, you know the drill. If anybody here on the panel wants me to stop, just say stop, stop, stop. If anybody in the chat wants me to stop and ask a question, just type one enter, one enter, one enter. That will catch my attention, and then I will stop the video. All right, guys, everybody ready? Here we go. Oh, by the way, one thing I should add is that this is Nadir Ahmed and TJump.
Allahu Akbar.
Do you want to go forward to where they actually stop? So
and the moderator is Kenny Bomer. Yeah, I just realized that this doesn't.
Just get straight past the intros and stuff to where they actually start. Otherwise, we get a lot of
atheist. He's interested in philosophy, and the agreement is 10 minutes. Should be able to hear the timer.
Thank Tom for participating in this discussion, this debate. And so today I'm going to be presenting irrefutable evidence, scientific evidence from the text of the Quran, which proves that it is indeed a scientific miracle.
It's funny how he makes this every single time. Every single time he gets beaten down, and the next time he makes the same claim again.
Yeah, I mean, he's it's like he's immutable, right? It doesn't matter what goes in those ears or out. It's like it's like dark matter. Dark matter. It just, it doesn't make contact with anything. They just go straight through. So the rest of us could hear it. He can hear it, but it's like in one ear and literally out the other, and there's no cognitive ability going on to process what's being said in response. But what does it mean to be irrefutable? Something like the inheritance error is irrefutable, i.e. that there's no possible answer that you could give that can actually rebut or refute this error in the Quran. So that's what we mean by irrefutable. It's a mathematically impossible error to refute. That's what I consider irrefutable. And as we will see here, his standard for irrefutable, which we will come to shortly, is as long as I say it, and it could be the case, then that's somehow irrefutable. Or, and I'll leave it for later because I talked about it with Stops, he will shoot himself in the foot. I'm not sure whether we'll get to it in this part, depending on how long we run. But you will hear. So remember, he said at the beginning, so just remember this, everybody, burn it into your brain. He said it's irrefutable, which means that it couldn't be any other way, and there's no possible rebuttal against this. Right? That's what irrefutable means to me. Hopefully, it's similar for you guys. But keep that in mind, because at some point later on, he's going to contradict himself, and I'll remind you. That's why I'm making a big deal of it now.
And now, there are statements in the Quran which agree with science, which people could not have known 1,400 years ago, yet they were mentioned in the Quran. I'm going to share my desktop over here real quick over here, show you my little presentation here. Now, I know there's been a lot of confusion about this. People who I actually respect a lot, people like Brother Hamza Zortes and others than them, who have expressed some concerns about this. And I hope tonight's discussion will satisfy all those doubts. So, like I said, there's so before I begin, I want to set the record straight on some of this confusion, and so I want to introduce two important concepts. Can you guys see my desktop here?
Stops.
Yes.
Just stop it for 1 sec.
So,
what is it that's where's the confusion here? Presumably, is the confusion with us, or is this with Hamza Tzortzis? Because he's now going to present something that apparently is going to take away, quote, all this confusion. Who's confused? It doesn't seem like Tzortzis is confused. It doesn't seem like any of us are confused. So where is this confusion? By that
the first one is in
an
an acronym called COPS, C-O-P-S, and I'll explain what that means. You see, there are many verses in the Quran in which agree with scientific fact, which has only been recently discovered. But that is not what makes the Quran a scientific miracle it by itself. There are many ancient books which do agree with scientific fact, okay? And it all has a perfectly natural explanation. So what do you do when you see a verse, whether it's in the Bible or the Quran or whatever the book is, what do you do when you see this type of agreement with science? You call the cops. Okay, this is an acronym. You see, just before, first of all, let me explain. So long as they're not retrofitting the verse or making the verse fit with science and injecting science into there, so long as that's not the case. The C stands for a coincidence. Look, it could have been a purely accidental discovery, stroke of luck, a poetic expression. He was just trying to be poetic, a metaphorical expression which accidentally agreed with science. It was not the author's intent to agree with science. This is a coincidence. So by definition, what a coincidence is some kind of occurrence or some kind of something which happens, an event which was not planned or expected. It was unexpected. So that might be the reason why. So you just don't jump to the conclusion, look, it only could have been God which could have been the author of that. There's many explanations. Or maybe let's go for the O. The O stands for it could have been something obvious. Like if you jump in the ocean, you might drown, or there's dangerous animals in the ocean. Well, that's pretty obvious. Okay? Or let's go with the P now. The P stands for plagiarism. Maybe the author of that book borrowed from an existing source, an unknown source, or some secret source even, and he just copied from there and he presented it into the Quran or whatever that book is. Or maybe he was a scientist. Maybe he's observing nature and he's doing scientific experiments, and therefore he wrote those scientific experiments into the Quran or whatever his conclusions were. So there's many examples of that, okay, of what cops are. So when you see an agreement with science, you always call the cops. Now the second important point I want to bring up is the issue of multiple interpretations.
Wait, stop.
Things versus.
Yeah, I'll give it to him. I do like his methodology to, examine whether something is, quote unquote miracle or not. So I at least appreciate that, okay, he's clearly defined something. But what we're yet to see is, how does he apply it? Because, he does point out 4 different points. And if I were to apply to this, like, the Quran would fall into Sorry?
No, carry on.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that's so yeah, let's just you can play the video, so yeah, we can
But
see
before
how.
you do, yeah, let's just welcome Thunderous, who's just managed
Hi,
to join us.
Thunderous. Hi, Thunderous.
Hey guys, sorry, continue what you're doing. I'm just going to be a further 2 minutes, but while I'm on now, hello to the panel, hello to the audience, and forgive my tardiness.
Good evening to you. And one other thing that should be done here is what does it take for something to be a miracle or a prediction, right? If memory serves, he will never give this. He'll tell us what shouldn't happen, i.e. these sort of things that he's made up here about the coincidence. But Stops and I have done it before, and it's been done elsewhere. I haven't got it to hand. I think there's about minimum 5 or 6 criteria that we would need to establish that it is in fact a miracle. So forget about all of these other things, that it might be this, it might be that, it might be whatever. What does it actually take for something to be a prediction, right? And that's not something that memory serves he will actually give here, right? Why? Because the standard, if you were to use that, would be way too high for him to meet. So it's a lot easier not to give that, but rather to say what wouldn't constitute it, as in like a few of those points. But there's a lot more to it, and I'll see if I can find it as Stops carries on.
Well, there's another thing. I used a different standard. I said, number one, and I think this is missing, what does it really say in the Quran? And this is where 90% of all these claims already fail. Because what people, they say, well, it says that the universe is expanding. It doesn't say that. It says God made the universe expansive. Now, if you take that, you cannot verify that, because you can't show how God did this, whether God did this, and so on and so forth. So this in itself is unverifiable. You can't do anything with it. So this is already a claim which fails right from the beginning, because that's not what it says in the Quran. And the second thing is, was this known? And most of the things that we see in the Quran are things that were known, which are being elevated as scientific. And then the third thing, of course, is, are they correct? And this is not the case. But what is strange, he is not taking this COPS approach, which, and I agree with Mustafa here, but this is actually a valid approach. It's quite okay. It's not good, but you can work with it. But why doesn't he take a sentence from the Quran as an example? Why does he say, well, why does he leave it so generic? Why doesn't he say, okay, here's what we're going to do. Let's apply this to a sentence and already show us on a living example how this works. Because I doubt that he's ever going to be able to do that. He will not go to the COPS thing again and say, here's what it says in the Quran, let's go COPS and do the check. I'm nearly 100% sure that he's not going to be doing that. So it's a bit weird, very strange. Oh, I need to go here.
Can have many good, perfectly good interpretations. For example, there was this TV show called In Living Color back in the 90s, really cool show. So this one guy, he used to dress up like kind of in a feminine way, the comedian, and he'd go up to people and says, excuse me, but are you bi? And people were like, whoa, wait a sec, what are you talking about? Bilingual. And that was really funny, because what he pointed out over here is a very important principle in logic and religion, was actually what he displayed there. See, that one word, are you bi, has two very good equally valid interpretations. Are you bilingual or are you bisexual? So that was a very good example. So that's just an example of how I'm showing you things can have more than one interpretation. You shouldn't and that's what Dr. Carl Sagan said, you shouldn't run with the interpretation that suits your agenda. Okay?
Just stop it there.
And sometimes.
Okay, but now let's see if he actually takes that advice, right? If there can be multiple interpretations, he would need to give us a clear formula for why his interpretation is either the only one or the best one, and why the other ones fail. Let's see whether he remotely does that. He's just said it himself. There's multiple. What would we expect from the Quran? Multiple interpretations, or something so crystal clear, so precise, so elegant, so amazing that there would be only one interpretation. You couldn't possibly misinterpret it, and it would be world altering. It would be just spectacular that all of us here would be just amazed by it, scratching our heads and going, no human could have done this. Let's see if we use that standard. Let's see if anything that he says remotely comes close to that.
And sometimes there's just not enough information in the text which positively proves that the Quran is referring to that scientific fact. So we can expect a verse to have multiple valid interpretations, but what is not expected is for one of those verses to agree with a scientific fact. That's unusual. It can happen, and when you see that happening, you call the cops. Okay, we're not going to jump to the conclusion that the book is a scientific miracle just because you see one of the multiple interpretations, valid interpretations, is agreeing with science. Okay, agreement with science is a rare and occurrence, which is something which is strange, and we can call it an unusual.
Excuse me?
What nonsense.
Agreement with science is a rare occurrence? What is this clown saying? It's
I think
strange. It's not unusual. It is
it's
very
the norm.
much expected.
What he's probably trying to say, if we're charitable, and he's just incredibly poor at articulating himself, is that some sort of prediction that nobody could have known is maybe rare. But the statement he makes there, books agreeing with science, virtually every book agrees with science. Otherwise, you'd be talking gobbledygook. Most people wouldn't understand
Exactly.
you. It refers to what we know, not what we don't know, or what is speculative. Most books are. So maybe if we take it charitably, then he's not referring to that sort of stuff, but it's very poorly articulated.
Yeah, but even a normal sentence in the Quran should agree with reality. I mean, science is nothing else but just an explanation of what happens in reality. So it should.
Phenomenon. So, having said all of that, here is what makes the Quran a scientific miracle. What makes the Quran a scientific miracle is not that you have one or two verses which agree with science, okay? Because you can call cops, and that can all be easily explained. It was a coincidence. It was obvious. It was plagiarism. It was maybe the author was a scientist. You could explain it away. But what if you see the same phenomenon occurring over and over and over again?
Just stop there quickly. Yeah, quickly. You go first.
Okay, he often uses that. I've seen him use that kind of approach so many times. The problem is, all it takes is one statement to be incorrect to show that this is not written by a God. This is the problem that we have here.
Correct. And also, he's begging the question. He's presupposing that there is a scientific miracle. Look what he says at the top there. What makes the Quran a scientific miracle is this. He's already assuming that there are scientific. That begs the question against somebody who thinks that scientific miracles aren't something that is not necessarily possible, but is so unlikely as to be close to impossible. So he's begging the question. He's already assuming there are these things here. So this is just fallacious reasoning. He has not generated an argument for why we should accept scientific miracles. Not that they are possible, but that there is some way that we can verify it in history. I'm not convinced that you can actually verify a scientific, quote, miracle in history. So for somebody like me, I'm already going to say, well, I don't accept the premise of your starting point. You haven't presented that argument. What evidence or what methodology would convince me, or what could convince me that a, quote, scientific miracle, whatever that's supposed to be, you'd have to still define that, is possible, that we can use today to look at that and say that's the case?
It's the typical thing of coming to a conclusion and then looking for evidence or looking for reasons why you can or might come to that conclusion, not the other way around, taking the evidence and seeing where
But
it
remember
takes
what
you.
he's doing here, Stops. He's very likely not trying to convince any of us that are thinking critically. Again, he's a propagandist, and his approach is to try and say this over and over on as many platforms as possible. And you'll see during this, quote, discussion debate, it's in one ear and out the other. So at no point is he here for an intellectually honest, nuanced discussion where he'll go away and think about things or rethink his position. None of that is happening, right? Because what he would be doing if he was trying to convince us is defining what a scientific miracle is, what the good argument is that we should accept that it's either probable or likely, and then seeing whether what he claims the Quran says remotely matches any of that. But as we'll see here, if memory serves, he doesn't do it in any way that is there to convince us. This is here for the gullible and the ignorant who already believe this stuff. I'm talking about his fellow Muslims, or at least some of them. But for the rest of us, this is just an incredibly poor, and of course he doesn't know how to, the side point, but he doesn't really know how to do a proper presentation anyway with these small words, long sentences. It's just painful to listen to and to watch.
The cops cannot explain that. Okay? It is human, and this is also a very important point. So let's go back to cops here, and I'll show you how the cops cannot explain that. You see, coincidence is something which is unexpected.
I can't speed this up.
It could be just a stroke of luck, but it is unexpected.
Yeah, you can do
but
it
if you just
on the
saw
website, but not
the
here.
agreement with science happening again and again and again, well, then that cannot be a coincidence. Something else is at play here. And of course, we're going to see,
Just
are
stop that
these
there quickly
obvious?
again. Okay, so again and again, so that's 3 agains. I don't know how many agains he's claiming here, but that cannot be. Okay, what's the argument it can't be? How many agains in your mind does it take for you that seems completely arbitrary and a very low number, clearly, so that you can try and make this, for it to be, we have to consider something other than a coincidence, even if we just go with that poor criteria. That's just one of many. Obviously, it's got to meet a lot more than that anyway, but that's just a single one. How many of them before you go, okay, would you and I accept as not being coincidence? 10, 15, 50, don't know, 100? But like you said, Stops, which is a great point, you just need one that is wrong, and then the whole thing collapses, because his claim is not just that there are some of these things that happen, but none of them make a mistake either. He hasn't actually said that yet, but that's something that he has said before. So, this is just...
Look what it says here. I didn't even read this the first time. We don't want to spend time giving specific examples.
Oh,
These things which people, you could just kind of infer by looking at it, And also in coincidence, there's also an issue of luck. So maybe you're just guessing at it. Maybe you're just trying to say,
It's painful.
well, and you're just guessing. But when you see it occurring over and over again, then this cannot explain it. That leaves one sensible explanation, and that there is a supernatural source who is the author of
his false dichotomy. This is called a false dichotomy. This is a fallacy in reasoning. His claim is that there can only be one other explanation. How did he determine that? That the only other option is either men or it's God. No, it could have been aliens. It could have been some other smart entity or something that happened. We just use aliens as a third option. How did he rule that out? Are aliens less likely than his God? And how does he establish that? So this is just a false dichotomy anyway.
of all the scientific information which you see in the Quran. And that's going to be demonstrated tonight. So I also want to point out that it is humanly possible, which does not require a God, to make all of the Quranic scientific statements in the Quran.
Okay, that's bullshit. That's total, absolute nonsense. Can you please show me how you can put ALM to agree with science? You can't.
Can a human being do it? Well, sure, it's possible. But what is not possible is for one man to do all of these, is to continuously make scientifically correct statements over and over again. That requires a supernatural
How does he
source.
know?
Okay.
What's the argument that only one man did it? That's his presupposition, right? That Muhammad did this. Again, now we'd have to go to the history, which you've got a lot of information on anyway. But that's just a presupposition, and we're granting that for the sake of the discussion. But if we had to challenge that, he would be in big trouble trying to provide verifiable evidence that in fact Muhammad authored or said everything in the Quran. That would be just probably a mountain. But we grant it for most Muslims just so we can have the conversation. But if we decided not to grant that, they wouldn't even get past that stage.
Yeah, and
Mustafa,
I was thinking, like, I was reading this hypothesis that there was a possibility of the Quran itself having specific, like a lot of people have made this claim, there are possibly two different authors of the Quran, especially if you look at the Medinian verses and the Meccan verses and how they're themed very differently structurally. So the way they're structured itself, it reflects like there are two different entities that are talking.
Mm-hmm.
They contradict each other a lot of times. So it could be just two different authors. We don't know.
Or three or four. Yeah.
Or three or four. Yeah.
Yeah. So this is the other thing is, remember, Muhammad is just a parrot. He did not write the Quran.
Exactly.
He's just...
Even in the narrative, it's Zayd bin Sabit who's collecting these from the hearts of the men, from written in stone, written in like leaves. He's the one collecting it. And even then, during the reign of Uthman, it's like him and three other guys, or like compiling all the information. And if there's a disagreement, write it in the dialect of the Quraysh. That was Uthman's instruction. And this is in the Islamic narrative. So if the Islamic narrative we take as fact, then Muhammad is not the author of the Quran. Zayd bin Sabit is.
Yeah, but he doesn't make the statements.
And just to add to that, when we consider that how much of the Quran is actually plagiarized from 2nd, 3rd, 4th century, 5th century sources, it could be just as easily argued that these so-called alleged quatrains, because that's what they really are, they're as ambiguous as Nostradamus' quatrain, were not actually stories that had already pre-existed that have been incorporated into the Quran anyway. So they don't necessarily have to have had divine inspiration when we know that much of the Quran has not had divine inspiration in the first place.
Yeah.
Okay, so here's what we know about the Quran. And we'll get to those cartoons in just a second here. I mean, later on in our discussion.
He has not said anything
That's
about
usually
what we know
the
in the
same point.
Quran.
So we know that the author of the Quran, Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and from an atheist point of view,
Hang on, is he saying that Muhammad authored the Quran?
He
Did
just
he
said
just
that.
say that?
Yes, he did.
He did.
Okay.
he was a man who sat down to write a book, and he made decisions in there. I'm going to talk about 4 facts about bees, and I'm going to answer the question about alcohol, because that is...
Stop. There's even the story of, what do you call it, Ibn Sahar, and Muhammad is dictating something and he's writing it down. So Muhammad's not exactly writing this thing down. And I thought he was supposed to be this uneducated man who got these revelations in a cave from an angel. So he didn't even decide to write this book. So there's just a lot of inconsistencies with this.
Yeah, he's just conveniently forgotten all of that sort of stuff. And if we were the most charitable people we could be, we could just say that what he really means is this was authored by God, and as Stop said, Muhammad was the parrot that parroted this back. But what we really want to get to here is he's trying to make the claim, really, if we try to steel man this terrible argument, he's trying to make the claim that all of these things, these, quote, scientific facts, they couldn't possibly be done by one man who sat down and write this. I mean, either why would he do this, or how could he know this? It's just impossible. And the only other alternative, false dichotomy in brackets, is that it must have come from a God. Well, which God? Oh, it's Allah. How do we get to Allah? Well, I'm not going to sort of tell you that, but I'll have to beg the question and suggest that if it's the Quran and it says it's Allah, circular argument, then it must have been Allah.
Now, the thing
And
is...
that's steel manning this position, by the way.
Mm-hmm.
Number 5 is something that he called into the Gin and Tonic show about. And we showed him that he is wrong about all of these. Now, why would someone call in, be schooled, educated, corrected on mistakes, on wrong conclusions that he had, and now a couple of years later say exactly the same thing again?
I think
Why would somebody...
Yeah, I think
Sorry?
we've answered that still. I have stops at the beginning. Because this is not about being corrected. He's just going to repeat
Yeah,
the
but
same
it's so
thing,
obvious.
propagandize on every channel he has. Doesn't matter if you showed him something, and he'll ask for citations. It doesn't matter if you gave it to him in black and white, and it was unanimous across the scientific community. He still wouldn't accept it. This is the level of this particular guy. He's utterly deluded and totally and absolutely dogmatic. So
Yeah, but
that's why
the
he
main
will
thing
keep
is
saying
he's
the same thing.
dishonest. This is the problem. He does not accept the facts, and now he is repeating something he knows it is wrong in order to deceive somebody. And that is what is called a lie. So he is highly dishonest. The other thing is, a scientific fact is not abolishing virginity test. That has nothing to do with the scientific fact. That's not... this is the level
He will
of...
try and talk about it a bit later on. He'll get into that later.
There's been a lot of problems with that as well. And I'm going to tell you one fact about the brain, and I'm going to write.
There is not a single fact about the brain in the entire Quran. The only thing that they do is they say somebody is going to be grabbed by a bit of hair that is, they call it the forelock. It's just a piece of hair that you are
Yeah,
grabbing.
the front of the head, right? The hair.
And this
the
is
tuft
why
on
they're
the
saying, well, he mentioned the forelock and this is hair, so they must have known about the prefrontal cortex. What the fuck?
Wait,
They're
let him do it,
talking
Stops.
about hair.
Because
Does he-
we should be able to bring up the verse as well, right? And just show
So is he
how
going to do? I thought he's just
absurd.
saying these are going to be theoretical possibilities,
No,
but
he
he's
does
never
bring
going to
these
do
up.
it.
So let's just wait and see. Some
Ah,
of
I'm
these
going to
things
write
he
two
does bring up.
facts about the ants. And every time he's doing this, he's going to be rolling the dice. And I'm going to correct 3
What?
scientific errors in the Bible. Oops, in the Bible, right there.
That hasn't, what does that have to do with it?
In the Bible, and we'll go over.
He has
that.
to do that. Has to do that. Put down the
What does
one
it have
man
to
in
do
order-
with the scientific fact in the Quran? What does the scientific fact in the Quran have to do with the Bible?
Because
Nothing.
if you belittle the Bible, you're more or less using it as a prop to elevate the Quran. It's just a tactic.
What
Yeah.
is
And this stuff has to be all right. I can't. There's no room for me to get this wrong. Okay. So the question, and this is what I'll be presenting to you. You see, you could probably get 1 or 2 of these. You know, we could explain it away. Yeah, he's just very lucky, or
I
it's
mean,
just
he's just
coincidental.
repeating himself here.
Yeah, and I'm surprised that TJump isn't sitting there giggling hysterically.
But
Well, this is like
Is
the
it-
opening ceremony, the opening thing, and they're not supposed to talk over each other, which gives him all the advantage because he can spew nonsense for a number of minutes unchallenged, because that's all he's here to do. He's not here for a debate,
Yeah,
as I've said, and you will
exactly.
see that.
is it possible, what you're seeing on your screen here, for Prophet Muhammad to state and get it right, and he rolls the dice every time he's doing it, he's rolling the dice, and he's
What does it mean rolling the dice? I don't understand what
Taking a
it's saying.
chance, it's like random, right? He's just getting lucky guesses. He keeps saying the same thing. This can't just all be lucky guesses. 1, 2 lucky guesses, sure, but all these lucky guesses. No, it can't be. Remember, he's not even going with precision at the moment. He's just going with all of these things, quote unquote, match science, and that can't possibly be luck or random. It has to be something else. And if it's not that, then it must be God.
strikes
That's
it,
how
and
bad
he's
this is.
successful on all of the scientific information that you are seeing in front of you, which I will go into detail. I'm just giving you the brief overview. Probably not. That's pretty ridiculous to assume all of this. So, having said that, I'll give up a little bit of time, maybe 30 seconds, and then when Tom comes back up, I will then start presenting the scientific evidences from the Quran, and we will start examining them. So,
Does he explain what this half, 16th, 8th, and all this is?
I don't remember him doing that one, but he does eventually mention the other stuff as they go through, because Tom does an opening statement, and then they do 2 minutes, and Bomer is timing it on a timer so that they don't interrupt each other.
Bomer is capable of operating a timer? Wow.
I'll go ahead and turn it over to Tom. Thanks.
Okay, thank you, Brother Nadir. You did have right at 30 seconds left, so that was great timing. Okay, so Tom, let me reset this timer here, and whenever you are ready to proceed, feel free to go, and I'll start the timer whenever you're ready.
Yeah, sure. So there's absolutely nothing significant about anything in the Quran. It's just a jumbled mess of random facts with no real significance scientifically whatsoever. Most of it was stolen from Greek philosophy, which was preserved by Islamic scholars and taught throughout the time period. That's why essentially no one in science really takes it seriously. I mean, the predictions in Hinduism are significantly better, but we still don't take those seriously. I don't know why Nadir thinks anything in the Quran is significant. Maybe there's some part I just missed when I was reading through it, but as far as I can tell, they're all pretty mundane stuff that pretty much everyone knew who was just around during the time. So yeah, there's not really anything significant about the Quran at all. I don't even know what a scientific miracle. That term doesn't really make any sense. There's no such thing as a scientific miracle. It's just doesn't. It's not even incoherent. I assume what he means is that it's improbable that it would occur, so that it's hard to explain how a person could know something, but it's really not. Like, nothing Muhammad knew was particularly special or significant in any way. He doesn't compare to Einstein or Newton or Ramanujan, V.S. Ramachandran, Ramanujan, the mathematician, like the guy who saved 1 billion lives, Norman Borlaug. Like, there are a million brilliant people who did amazing things, and by Nadir's criterion, if we're saying that these things Muhammad did require a god, well, then all those guys I just listed require like 1,000 gods to support them, because they're significantly more prolific in what they accomplished, and Muhammad isn't really in anything he accomplished as far as I know. But I will look forward to hearing Nadir's.
That's actually quite a valid point, and I actually quite like that, because in effect what you say, even if when you look, the Muslim world have had these ayahs for centuries, and the byproduct of the Muslim world has been nothing as a result of these ayahs. And yet the atheist world, or the non-Muslim world rather, because that's everything that's non-Muslim, have contributed more to the scientific world than what the Quran has or a Muslim has via an interpretation of the Quran. So that has to be sort of like highlighted, that the Quran with all its claims has produced nothing, yet external to the Quran, without making a claim, has produced everything.
And stop. He does make a good argument that Hinduism has better claims, but even we don't take those seriously. And he's correct on that. Like, Hinduism itself, like, it's a dogma, but like it made better predictions, comparatively speaking. And not only that, like, he also points out the fact that there are many men who've done more brilliant things, but we don't use the same argument for them as they were inspired by a god. But why is it reserved for someone like Muhammad?
Yeah, and look, this is exactly a good point. If you would find EMC squared, that would be quite compelling. That would catch my attention.
But they can't even get basic fractions. How are they going to get complicated?
And this is the problem.
Theoretical physics formulations correct.
It doesn't even mention a bicycle or electricity or nothing.
Interesting, and I will end there.
Okay, all right, great.
Did you want to? Okay, I guess he had a little bit more time, but okay, I guess I could
just stop it there. Stop for 1 sec. We've got to do critiques on both sides. I think Tom could have anticipated a little bit more and done a better opening statement there, highlighting the lack of, the poor presentation by Ahmed, which he might not have known ahead of time, but you can leave a bit of time for that sort of stuff and then get to the general thing. So I think Tom could have done a much better job here. Specify what the scientific miracle is, why we should accept it, and then point out that he's begging the question at the very beginning, suggesting that all of these are scientific miracles when he hasn't even shown any of them, right? So I think there's a lot more that could have been done with Tom in the beginning. And I know his sort of style is much shorter and to the point and stuff, and then he wants to get into it. But I think if he set the stage a bit better here, that should at least, because we know Ahmed's not going to say much of consequence anyway, but at least you put it out there. These questions can hang in there at the moment that hasn't been highlighted to people who aren't paying attention. And I think that's something that I'm quite, focused on doing. So I noticed that he didn't do a lot of that.
Well, what I would have done is I would have said, look, I looked at this and I found 135 of these miracle claims, which are supposed to be scientifically accurate and correct. But as soon as you go and investigate any one of them, you find that they are wrong, they are fallacious, they are misinterpretations, they are misrepresentations. It does not work that way. So it doesn't matter which one you look at, they are all going to be wrong. So it doesn't matter which one Nadir is going to pick, it's going to be faulty. And that's, I would have prepared people for all these fallacious arguments that are going to be brought up, to show that as soon as you start looking at them, they fall apart. And this is what I would have made sure to bring up.
And the other thing that stops is to highlight the criteria by which we could potentially establish something as a, quote, miracle, scientific. I think scientific miracle is a misnomer, because a miracle is sort of the, kind of the denial of science. So science would show that, like Jesus resurrecting would be a miracle, or the moon being split, or, Muhammad flying on a winged buraq, or whatever the case is. That would be a miracle. That violates all the laws of physics and what we know about reality. That would potentially be evidence of or towards a miracle, if not the miracle itself. And so, but those plus the criteria for what this would have been, I think would have been very helpful as well, because now you can force him, and then you can hold him to account. Because now if you've got all of these criteria, say, okay, every time he brings one up, right, in my 2 minutes, I'm going to hold this. Is it precise? No. Is it this? Is it that? No. Boom, we're done. Right. So you subject it every single time to these criteria, and you show how it utterly fails. I think that would have been something that you could have done to hold him to account here as well, or at least to the audience. Right. You're not going to do anything to him. He's impervious to any sort of reasoned argument. But what you want to show is to the audience.
Exactly.
He wanted to end there, so that was his opening. Okay. All right. So, Brother Nadir, you'll have 2 minutes. So whenever you're ready, I'll start your time.
Okay, thanks. So let me go ahead and address some of that. Well, first of all, you said most of this was stolen from Greeks. This is what he was claiming. Well, if that's your claim, again, we could look at...
No, that's not what he said. He said a lot of this stuff was plagiarized, for example, from the Greeks, from those. But he didn't say that this was all from the Greeks. He just said there are other, like Indians and blah, blah, blah. We're not taking this seriously because there's no reason to. So
he said, remember what we said as well.
He said when he looked into the Quran, that's what he found. That,
yeah, but he didn't say it was only Greeks.
No, of course not. But I think what he's basically saying is that the study or the investigation he's done of the Quran is that he's found nothing but things that came from externalities like Hindus, Greeks, and other.
Exactly. What I'm objecting to is Nadir saying that he said everything is from the Greeks, which he didn't do.
But also the other thing that you and I talked about, Stops, is Tom is, unfortunately, he makes these claims. Don't make claims, right? You question them. He's the guy that has to prove it. As soon as you say, oh, it could have been from the Greeks, it could have been from this one, that one, he's going to say, well, prove it. Bring up some citations, show X, Y, and Z, and that shifts the burden of proof. It's, Stops and I were talking about it earlier today, actually. This whole thing, you've got to be very disciplined not to bring up what you think it could have been, because now you have a burden that you've got to discharge. Don't do that. Just keep questioning them. Does it meet these criteria? What else? What would we expect instead of this vagary? What could we expect? Blah, blah, blah. But as soon as you make a claim like this, he's off and running, right? Because to them, this is an opening. Either they can shift the burden of proof, or they can knock it down because it's not a particularly strong thing and say, oh, well, blah, 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 right? Don't give them information that takes them off from defending their weak claims.
The explanations is plagiarism. But if that's the case, that he's plagiarizing all of these things, then we can automatically declare an Islamic debate victory on that one. You know why? Because if you are going to go to the Greeks and the Romans, the Persians, and steal information from those books are mired with all kinds of scientific errors. How are you able to zero in and pick up the scientifically accurate information from an ocean of misinformation, hypotheses, and
I had a problem with that. I had a problem with that kind of reasoning with Adnan Rashid and Hamza Sources when they confronted PC Meyer and was Aaron Ra several years ago outside some building after some kind of discussion had taken place, and where Adnan Rashid or Hamza Sources, well, how did he manage to pick all the correct points? And I thought, well, but for me, my instant reaction to that was, well, how did the Romans or the Greeks have that information in the first place then? If it's a miracle revealed by Allah, as you're saying, then did Allah by implication reveal this to the Romans and the Greeks then? If you're going to go with that kind of logic, then you're basically implying that Allah gave this information to other people as well, and Muhammad was just able to extract it, because you're still containing or continuing the argument of Islamic miracle.
Yeah, I think what they're doing, though, Thunderous, is they're saying, well, the Greeks, the Romans, they got bits right, they got bits wrong. And
I know what
the
you're
bits
saying.
they got right weren't even that good. And look, Muhammad came along, he confirmed
took
and made
all
the
of it.
bits that were right even better.
Yeah.
And therefore, it doesn't matter that they got bits right and wrong. That's kind of what Nadir's saying. But it's because Tom made the claim that, it was about the Greeks. We don't need to go there, right? We just need to subject his claims to a criteria that we can, that could, in fact, show a miracle or a scientific miracle.
I was saying what I heard before. For instance, I think there was an argument, and I'll paraphrase it, that the Greeks and the Romans got 20 things wrong, 4 things right. Muhammad was able to pick the 4 things that were right. That in itself was miraculous. And I just thought,
that's kind of what they're saying, right? Yeah.
Yeah,
and to
absolutely.
the gullible and the ignorant, that will sound very convincing, right? Because they've got a very low bar, right? The bar is very low. That to a mind that doesn't think critically was like, wow, how could that in and of itself is a miracle. When, of course, it's nothing of the kind. But that's why bringing up other civilizations and stuff leads to this. And again, he'd have to demonstrate they got all these things wrong and all these things right. All he has to do is one, though. And again, if they got 100 right and 1 wrong, he's gonna pick the 1 wrong, not tell you that the Greeks got 100 things right, and then make as if these guys were ignoramuses or they weren't that good and Muhammad's was much better. And it's just a tactic. And the more we can avoid that sort of stuff, the better, I think, because keep the thing on him and showing that it was the case.
The other thing on the tactic that I've just noticed is he's not bringing up his own arguments. He's saying, how could he, asking TJump now to make the case for him.
Yeah,
so
shifting the burden, yeah.
Postulums and things like that. So if that's the case, that is obviously not going to be a very good explanation to explain away all the scientific information which I'm going to give you. You see, that's a one-trick pony. It could work once, maybe twice. But that's really, I would advise you, kind of give you a stern warning here. Don't.
He hasn't even demonstrated it once. He has not demonstrated anything, and he's talking like he's already made his case. Everything is clear. And now, listen, be careful with what you do with this.
TJump, right? The only thing he teaches TJump is a load of crap that, he shouldn't waste his time with him. That's probably the biggest lesson, hopefully, TJump will take out of this, not to waste time with this clown again.
Use that as an explanation. You can if you want. You know why? Because we're going to run the probabilities of him getting these things right. And I'm going to give you 50%. It's a 50-50 shot of getting these things
well, then do it
scientifically
already,
correct.
Clown.
But if you say that he stole it from the Greeks or the Romans, you know what the probability of what that does to the denominator of really going to those?
You see, this is exactly what Rob predicted. If you make a claim, he's going to hook on that, and he's going to spend time on this instead of making.
He's not going to present anything either, is he? Because if he did it like a statistical analysis, a probability thing, which he maybe he's heard the word and he has like a passing understanding of. But if you got a game theorist or a probability expert in, this is not a straightforward thing, and it wouldn't be, I suggest, as improbable as he claims. But if he makes a vacuous statement that it sounds like it is, again, remember, he's not appealing to us or anybody who's thinking clearly. I've got to tell you that we've got to keep reminding ourselves that this is not meant to convince us. This is vacuous rhetoric that just blows past us like noise, right? It's like a wind, and a smelly one at that just goes past us. We've got to hold our nose, wait for it to go past, and then we smell the fresh air again. But that's what's happening. So you've got to point that out for the audience, or at least that's my tactic, is to point it out for the audience.
Yeah. And you've got to remember, there are people out there who are only doing one thing, and that is waiting for exactly something like this. That's all they do, nothing else.
Those books and succeeding and really getting scientifically accurate information that works, that success.
30 seconds.
That's going to be a lot more than 50%. You're looking at 1 over 1,000 or something like that. And I'll show you that. So it really is in your best interest. Even though you may think that, don't bring that forth as your explanation, because that's going to make it so highly improbable when we crunch the numbers. And as you said, in
make up
fact, you
some
said
crap.
something, there's no such thing as all the scientific information could have been done by others. I've already said that in my presentation. So you're chasing
you
after a
haven't.
straw man.
Okay, thank you, Nadir. All right, Tom, if you'd like to respond, you have 2 minutes.
Nadir must have some new interesting understanding of a straw man, because if I literally copied what he said, then it's not a straw man. It's literally what he said. A straw man is when you misrepresent someone's position, but that's interesting. So yeah, we know that for sure. Islamic scholars took many information from the Greek. It was common knowledge during the time period. Muhammad absolutely knew it, unless he was a complete ignoramus. So the fact that he could recite that information that was known from the Greeks isn't really hard to surmise. There's nothing special there. And I don't know what Nadir means by that somehow improbable. Like, no, that's the most probable thing. Like, how would that be improbable that you heard other facts that other people discovered and then you recited those facts? That's how education works. I don't know if Nadir I don't know how Nadir comes to the conclusion that education is improbable. That's kind of how most kids learn things. I don't understand his argument there. So yeah, I really didn't understand any of his points there, because he didn't make any. He just kind of said stuff that didn't make any sense or wasn't relevant to any of the topics. So I don't know where to go from there.
It's a pity. It's a pity he didn't say, well, so far, all we've heard is waffling. Nadir has not made a single point yet. Not one. So what is the idea behind this if he doesn't even manage to make a single point? He's just waffling, talking around this stuff, but never actually coming to show what it is that he's saying. That's it. He doesn't apply.
He kind of said it, but like you say, Stops, he could have highlighted that and drawn a line under it and bolded it out. And that made it even more clear. He sort of said it like, he hasn't said anything of interest. But I think with a time like that, you've really got to make that so crystal clear to the listening audience. If that's what your goal is, right, then you've got to have that goal in mind when you're responding to it, because this was, as Thinking Clearly statement and any others, he's just pulling random stuff out of his butt here and just making claims that he hasn't in no way can demonstrate, right? All I'm, if I'm Tommy, is like, okay, give us something that we can have a look at. Bring up the verse, make your claim, bring up the verse, and let's put it against my criteria, which I would have given in the beginning, and let's see how it stacks up. And by the way, just to do that, I'll do the same thing, but I will make it better in every respect. Every single one I'll improve upon, guaranteed. Right, I'll make that prediction that I can improve on every single one of these as a mere human, make it more precise, more accurate on every single thing. And then let's see which one of the two, if we're using my criteria, is better.
And he's been given a curveball, because Nadir said to him, you've made a claim, provide the evidence. So all he has to do is turn it around and said, well, you made the claim. You've given us 5, or I don't know how many there were. Well, where's the evidence? Show us the evidence. He can just turn it around. So it's a pity.
Okay, you still have 54 seconds. You want to stop there?
Yep, I'm good.
Okay. All right, so Brother Nadir, you have 2 minutes to respond. Go ahead. Whenever you're ready.
Oh, yeah, sorry about that.
Sure.
Okay, so let me just share my desktop over here. So in my presentation, didn't I say it is humanly possible, does not require God to make all the statements in the Quran which agree with science?
That's your claim.
So this is a straw man. You're chasing after a straw man. I'm already giving you that. But what is not possible is for one man to continuously make scientifically correct statements over.
I love him face bombing.
Yeah.
And over again. So that's the argument you're going to need to deal with tonight.
Okay,
so
that is
just
stop it there again, Stops. That part there is one of his central arguments. That requires a massively good argument and supporting reasons. We haven't remotely heard that. Right, firstly, that it's one man, number one, to continuously, in other words, his claim is that there's no mistake whatsoever, and it's scientifically correct. What does he term scientifically correct, and what would constitute being scientifically incorrect? I want to know the different criteria, and we don't move off that point until we agree on that criteria, because I know he's going to have an incredibly low bar for what's scientifically correct and a higher bar because he's going to have it exactly the opposite way around than what it should be. It should be incredibly high for scientifically correct and very low for scientifically incorrect, but he's going to have it exactly the opposite way around. And then the last thing, there's the false dichotomy. Over and over again, this requires a supernatural source. How have you ruled out some other option? And presumably because he doesn't think very much, he's going to say, what other option? And I could just say aliens.
Further ado, let me begin the first agreement with science, and that's the question on alcohol. So we know from science today that alcohol is a drug. Okay, we know that.
Excuse me? Where'd you get that from? What do you mean alcohol is a drug?
From a scientific point of view, alcohol is a drug, and the Quran.
Okay, you see, this is the problem. He doesn't understand what science is. Science will never do that. Science will never say this is a drug. Science will tell you the composition of something, under what conditions it has what kind of possible effects. That is the way that science works. Science does not tell you it's a drug and it. No, you're an idiot. You're a fool. Really, you are an ignorant fool who doesn't understand what you're talking about. I don't understand why TJump keeps quiet and doesn't show him anything in the 2 minutes that he has.
Right?
Yeah, but in the 2 minutes that he has. Sorry, Thunder.
I was just saying that he's got to go with the alcohol line. He's not using chocolate, coffee, or anything else. He's got to go with alcohol because it's one thing that's banned in Islam. So he's trying to glorify Islam by bringing in something that, particularly in the, say, past 150 years, has grown into something that a commodity has got a very ill repute.
Yeah.
By doing that.
This is the sentence. This is how it is. Kenny and Nadir, scientifically correct, equals Quranically correct. That's exactly what we're looking at, yeah.
But the other thing that stops, when he says that alcohol's a drug and he'll go on to tell us all the negative effects, how do we know that? We don't know it because the Quran says so. We know it because there's other evidence that says it. And then the claim is, well, hey, this evidence points to the Quran because the Quran made a claim. Instead of the Quran saying, hey, alcohol's bad, and here's all the effects that you will see. You'll see X, Y, and Z. You'll see all these nuanced things, right? Or things that people couldn't, even better, things that people couldn't observe themselves, right? Some sort of molecular change or whatever the case may be, right? Because you can observe when people drink that there's certain characteristics. It doesn't require a genius to notice what happens when people drink, right? But if there was something that happened that science couldn't have known, that would have been impressive.
Was cirrhosis of the liver known back then? I don't know, but that would have been something. Drinking too much alcohol could lead to cirrhosis of the liver.
I did not watch Bomer's facial expression when he heard alcohol because he learned that there's no alcohol in the Quran at all. I wonder if he's cringing inside thinking, Nadia, don't go there, don't go there.
Quran gave a scientifically correct statement in terms of alcohol, in which it condemned it. So, in fact, let me find my notes over here.
Show us the verse.
There we go.
It's not condemned. It's not.
So from research, because the Quran condemned alcohol, we know that Muslim women are 50 times less likely to give birth to a fetal alcohol syndrome baby. This is a disease that occurs in children
but as a result of first-come marriages, Muslim women are likely to be 90% giving birth to babies with defects or disabilities or something because the first cousin marriages, I'd sooner take my chances with the 50-50 than the 90 to 100.
Oh my God.
The mother drinks alcohol. 50 times less likely. From a scientific point of view,
where does it say that in the Quran?
The statement which the Quran gave, not only does it agree with science, but it has greatly helped humanity. Let me open up my notes here a little bit so you guys can see that. But not only that, but we also know
30 seconds.
Some people, like indigenous people, who can't have any alcohol, and as a result, the landscape is filled with drunk indigenous people, as you see in America. There are none like that in the Islamic world. So now you have two options. Either
hold on. It's a very bold claim about indigenous drunk individuals here.
Either he intended to do all this good, or he didn't intend. If he didn't intend it, then this falls under the category of coincidence, and we could chalk it up as a coincidence, as a human explanation for this.
And he has not shown us where the Quran condemns alcohol.
Okay, thank you, Nadir. All right, Tom, you have 2 minutes.
So I think Nadir needs to tell us what he thinks a straw man fallacy is. because if I'm literally quoting what he says, then it can't be a straw man. So I think he may just not know what a straw man is, but it's not really one of the arguments here. So again, nothing Nadir said was actually presenting evidence. He just said, hey, Islam denounces alcohol, which isn't a scientific statement. Science doesn't make prescriptions, so it has nothing to do with science.
Exactly. Thank you.
And everyone knew alcohol was poison way before Muhammad. Like literally, this argument he's using for fetal alcohol syndrome was known by the Greeks 1,200 years prior, because they literally said women were not supposed to drink alcohol specifically because it would harm the children. So where the Quran doesn't actually say that, the Quran just denounces alcohol, and Nadir makes these extraneous, ridiculous connections that somehow that meant that Muhammad wanted to prevent fetal alcohol syndrome, which it doesn't say that at all. Like Muhammad probably knew nothing about this and had no idea that there was a connection between those two. He just realized that, yes, alcohol is bad. People do bad things when they're drunk, so let's outlaw alcohol. And that was essentially the extent of the Quran's take on alcohol. But the Greeks and Romans knew this, specifically said this, actually verbatim, that alcohol causes damage to children, so women should not drink alcohol, as opposed to Islam, which just outlaws alcohol as a whole. So this argument does nothing to support his case at all. This is exactly zero. This is zero evidence for anything spectacular. And how this relates to God is unknown. Like a guy wrote down alcohol is bad in a book, therefore God. I don't get it.
Okay. All right. So thank you there, Tom. And so Nadir, you have 2 minutes to respond whenever you're ready.
Sure. So actually, I agree with most of what Tom is saying.
Why does he have to respond? He is the first one. He is the claimant. I don't quite understand it. All of a sudden, everything has reversed. He needs to remember that TJump will have the last word. So if he carries on just responding to what TJump says, he's not going to get anywhere.
Because at the end, he says he doesn't get it. Well, he's going to get it in the end. So as I said, when you appeal to the Greeks and the Romans, they knew about this. So therefore, you copied from that person. The probability of copying things from the Greeks and Romans and actually getting it right is really high. We're talking about 1 over 1,000. Okay, fine.
We're talking about 1 over 1,000. 1,000 what?
And then he said, Muhammad must not have knew nothing about this, about the effects of FAS and how it also, if you look in the other good factors which we see or the other good consequences which we see in the Islamic world, there's no drunk Indian people like you see or Eskimos and Aborigines as we see in the Western world. This is scientifically significant information, and the response the response to alcohol, which in the Quran is scientifically correct. From a scientific point of view, you don't need alcohol. You can go about your life without it. That is acceptable from science. Now, he said this is something which everybody knew. That's what he said. No, it's not that easy to come up with the right dosage there. Let me show you somebody who didn't know. Okay, and we take it to the Bible. So let me just first correct you.
Just
here.
stop there. Stop. I stepped away for a moment. Presumably, he was saying everybody knows that alcohol's bad for you, something like that, right?
Yeah.
Again, I just think this is not a good line of argumentation, because now he's going to go show that there might be somebody who didn't know this, right? Somebody somewhere, whatever the case is. Yes, maybe there was somebody who didn't know this. That doesn't prove his claim is correct. And he hasn't gone to the Quran, right?
He's going to go to the Bible now. He's either going to quote Noah when he came off the ark. He's either going to quote Solomon in the book of Ecclesiastes. And the interesting thing is, or Lot, or he might. I'll be interested to see if he quotes Jesus turning water into wine, or when Jesus prayed and made a covenant and he did it with a glass of wine.
John chapter 2, verse 7 and 11. Yeah. Here we see Jesus turn water to wine.
Well, there you go.
Okay. Now, on the left you have the Bible. He turned water into wine. Okay? So you're allowed to drink wine in Christianity. Okay, cool. Now, let's look at the Quran. It says, oh, you have believed, indeed, intoxicants. It doesn't say intoxicants. Now, he's talking about alcohol. Where does it say alcohol? The most that you can get away with is intoxicants, but it doesn't say that. And then it says, arrows are but defilement from the work of Satan, so avoid it. So avoid the work of Satan. It doesn't say alcohol is prohibited. It says avoid the work of Satan. And it says something that covers the brain or covers the mind. Well, these intoxicants are actually prayer. It says there that you should not pray so much because prayer is the work of Satan, so avoid it. Because prayer also covers the mind, the same way as what they are saying. So I can interpret this any way that I want it.
Yeah, I think stops as well. There's a lot of inference going on here to get to this idea of alcohol. But if it's the case that we show today, and there's some studies, and I have to admit that it's inconclusive, but if we could show, and they've pointed towards like a glass of red wine a night for certain people, not everybody potentially, but for certain people, because different human beings, when I used to drink, it would take me, and I only drank for about 3 or 4 years when I was in London, but it would take me about 10 beers to really feel drunk. Some people can get drunk on 3 beers. But because I hadn't drunk much in my life prior to that, and effects take a lot longer for them to, either, and that's a good or a bad thing. In drinking, I guess it's a good thing. For other things, it's a bad thing. But it takes longer for the effect to kick in for me. So I'd get 10 beers, and then I'd start to go, okay, I feel like I'm on a ship that's moving around and stuff. I never threw up or whatever the case. And I knew when to kind of like, I've had enough now. But it works differently. Now, if it is the case that 1 glass of wine a night for most people will reduce the effects of heart disease, then the good outweighs the bad, and it would falsify the Quran. Right?
Can I just add on to that? That red wine is actually being recognised medically to aid with the digestion of fats in the foods, which is why a lot of Europe. I know it's a bit spurious.
Yes,
I'm not saying it's a categorical fact, but I wanted to add on to that many European countries like the Germans, the French, and the Italians actually drink wine with their meals as a part of the meal eating process, but you don't
Spanish,
find and Spanish, but you
Portuguese.
But you don't find, I was naming the obvious ones, but you don't find the implication of what Nadir is saying by the consumption of wine, that somehow it turns you into, or it has this kind of effect. Because for decades, for centuries, certain cultures and countries and such, as part of their custom, has to be consumed alcohol, and we've not seen a detrimental effect in those countries as a result of that. We do have a problem in England, admittedly, with the consumption of alcohol, but that's more of a cultural thing rather than a product of or as a result of alcohol.
Okay, so the point of the matter is, if you go and you look at only the Quran, the only thing that you can say is, if you go and interpret it, and you go from step 1 to step 2, step 3, step 4, then step 5 could be, it could be that they're talking about alcoholic beverages. And if you do the same thing, you can get to the conclusion that it says here that these alcoholic beverages are to be avoided. That is the maximum that you can get out of this sentence. Whatever he is now taking from that is a scientific conclusion, that it aids in liver cirrhosis, or it avoids this, or whatever it does, or the fetal syndrome and things like that. That is a totally different thing. It is not in the Quran. So whatever you do with this information is up to you. It's not out of the Quran, and this is the point. And this is what TJump needs to point out. He needs to point out all the time, what you are doing is you are jumping into conclusions, you are making your own conclusions, and that none of that is based on the Quran or anything even close to it. So that is what we need to show to people. And it doesn't make sense to compare it to the Bible. If you are arguing for a scientific miracle in the Quran, you cannot go to the Bible. That does not make sense. Not at all.
No, and also stops. I mean, these, again, is this supposed to be a scientific miracle? Give me something like a black hole. If they predicted with fine detail a black hole that no human could possibly have known, that would be evidence in favor of it, right? But these sort of things are mundane things. Most of this you can observe, as everybody else has pointed out as well. So where's the miracle? That's what I said. The bar is going to be very low for miracle, which is why you need this criteria, and you need to measure it against it. In his 2 minutes, Tom should have this criteria. Let's measure this. Let's compare it with something that we would think is a spectacular thing that nobody could actually have known. When you compare and contrast, this looks utterly mundane and totally childish. But unless you're doing that for the gullible, they get drawn in. They just get hypnotized with this. So you've got to sort of shake them out out of it, I think. And you're right, Tom needs to do more to compare and contrast and to hold a criteria for every one of these nonsense claims.
Because he was on a good track saying, okay, look, people knew that alcohol was bad. Okay, yeah, big deal. But then he needs to go and then say, well, so it is not a miracle that this shows up in the Quran a couple of 100 years later. That's not the point. And the other things that you said don't follow from what it says in the Quran. So you have two problems. That's what I would expect. That's what I would do anyway.
And another point, guys, is why would Allah promise wine in the heavens? Like whenever you go to heaven to whoever goes.
Yeah, that's a dicey one.
Yeah.
Because there are so many cop-outs.
I remember in this country reading articles about certain donkeys that are found getting drunk because they're eating apples, and the fermentation of the sugar to alcohol had taken place. So I would say the natural process of sugar to alcohol must have been something that, from a biological point of view or a chemical point of view, whatever area it falls into, was a process that God would have put in there. So that process, by implication, is a process Allah put in there. So the consumption of alcohol is something, because it's a natural process that is actually found taking place in the fruit that certain animals have found to get drunk on when they've consumed those fruits.
Fermenting fructose. Do you know the movie The Gods Must Be Crazy?
I've not seen it. I'm not seeing it, no.
Okay, Gods Must Be Crazy has a scene in it which is going to have you on the floor. Because I don't know how they did this. I mean, there have been a lot of allegations that this was not exactly animal friendly. But it shows drunk animals. And they're saying, well, there comes a time when, all the fruit fall on the ground and the apples and what have you. The animals eat apples and then they ferment and then they get drunk. And then they show how animals behave when they are drunk, and it's hilarious. I don't know if it is true that they did not harm the animals. Okay, this is always the caveat I have to show, but it looks hilarious.
And then and in many passages in the Bible it says, drink a little bit of wine for thy stomach's sake. Wine
30 seconds.
Medicinally. So here's what we have. As we can see, this we can chalk it up as a coincidence, meaning he did not have the intent to save those millions of children from FAS and American Indians and people like that, but it accidentally happened because I was just copying from the Greeks and Romans, and or maybe it was just he was guessing, he saw something bad happening. So that means this can be chalked up as a coincidental occurrence, what we see in the Quran. So I'll move on to the next point after he gets done.
Okay, thank you, Nadir. And Tom, you have 2 minutes.
So Nadir attracted a straw man there because I didn't say he copied this from the Greeks. Like, no one needed to copy this from the Greeks. Everyone knew alcohol hurts you. Alcohol is bad. You can see it kill people. There were always drunks who died from alcohol poisoning thousands of years before we knew of alcohol poisoning. This is common knowledge. Like, everybody knew alcohol is poison. It's kind of the point. You're just letting it ferment. It's just rotting something. So clearly, if you're poisoning it, it's going to be bad for you. This is the fact that a guy wrote this down in a book is not a scientifically significant fact. You could find billions of people who did this, literally. And telling you not to do it isn't a scientific fact at all. It's not a fact. It's a prescription. Facts are descriptive. Prescriptions are not. They're prescriptive. So this isn't a scientific fact whatsoever. It's just telling us not to drink alcohol like pretty much everybody. And science doesn't care what you can live with or without. Science, again, doesn't tell you what you should do. It just tells you the consequences of certain actions based on facts. The Quran doesn't. The Quran just says, don't drink alcohol. And so it has nothing to do with FAS, which the Greeks already knew. So this wouldn't, even if it did, that wouldn't be significant. Yeah, like if it literally said that women shouldn't drink alcohol because it could damage the baby, then that could be reasonably have been copied from the Greeks because the Greeks already knew this. But it doesn't even say that. It just says don't drink alcohol. There's nothing significant here. This is like, look at the trees there for God. This is like a Donald Trump argument. Nobody knew that alcohol could cause FAS. No, this is a ridiculous argument.
Just stop it there, stops.
And that was right at the 2 minute.
Stops, yeah. I mean, just repeating yourself over and over is not particularly powerful, right? That's why I say you've got to subject this thing to these criteria and just show its absurdity. You just saying that it's this or it's that forget about Nadir. I mean, nothing will penetrate there. But I'm not sure that will be particularly convincing to anybody on the sideline who's listening. But if you were, because all you can appeal to is somebody who's potentially open-minded. Everybody who believes the Quran is nonsense, like us, obviously is not going to accept anything. And Tom could say basically anything that's not going to, we're not going to be affected by that. But the people who might be interested in this aren't hearing anything substantive other than to say, well, it could have been this, it could have been that, and so he's repeating the same sort of thing. I think that it could be a lot stronger rebuttal from Tom in these few minutes, because
he was on the right
feels
track.
like it's his own opinion against Nadir's, and Nadir shares his screen or claims to bring up something, and to the uninitiated it looks like he's saying something and he's quote backing it up, and Tom is just saying it off the cuff and just denying it essentially.
And no, this happened a couple of days ago, so this is recent.
Mark, okay, great. Okay, so Nadir, you have 2 minutes to respond.
So let me correct him on his factual factual mistakes here. He said, everybody knew alcohol's bad. Everybody knows it's all poison. No, it didn't actually. You see, we see in the Bible, it actually prescribes alcohol for thy stomach's sake. And you will see actually alcohol is used medicinally, it's actually mentioned in many books as something favorable to drink. And there's many examples. I just use the Bible as one. So that's factually incorrect. But look, he's saying, Muhammad could not have known that he was going to save millions of children from FAS, and I totally agree with that. So what he's having I think a hard time understanding is,
I don't quite understand the reasoning. Muhammad saved people because his God said reduce the intake of alcohol. Is that his reasoning?
Yeah, that's the claim. That's the inference, right? Because God said this and knew that this was going to happen. Look at all of these things that happened, and this couldn't have been known, and therefore this is miraculous. I mean, the bar couldn't possibly be any lower, right? His post hoc reasoning backwards to say, look what's happened that we've observed today or over a period of time, and attributing post hoc back to something that Muhammad said, which wasn't even close to being miraculous, something that people could observe, and then patting himself. The bar has to be low here, I think, as we all know, right? The Quran just doesn't have anything substantive in terms of scientific miracles or anything else, and that's why people like Hamza taught us, Stops and I disagree with him on most things, but he's smart enough to know that the gibberish that this guy is speaking is just untenable. And if you want to be taken seriously, you wouldn't be saying this. And we don't take the guy seriously. What we are doing here is showing people how ridiculous this is, just because he's been on the show and Tom is discussing this with him, and because we can actually show the scientific miracles aren't miracles, so that's a lot easier for us to do. But we won't do another one of these very lightly, because he does the same old thing, right? So yeah.
But the thing is, what Nadir is saying is that his God, for 300,000 years, the same thing with slavery, for 300,000 years, he allowed people to get drunk, he allowed people to get killed, died, and poisoned themselves with alcohol. And then only 1,000 years ago, he came up with the idea, well, maybe I should change my mind, and now I'm going to take alcohol out of the picture. So what he is painting is his God as a despotic, brutal killer. If he leaves it for 300,000 and then only now decides to abolish this.
But then the old argument will come up. If he was to present that to him, he'll just tell us, but all those religious texts of previous prophets, the 123,909 prophets that went before him, all those texts got corrupted with alcohol because they wanted to drink alcohol.
Yeah, but then his God intentionally did that.
Of course, but then I've always fallen these when I get to situations like this where I think to myself, okay, I'll even grant you, because I can't be bothered to argue in this instance that all these miracles are real. They're not miracles, but I'll use the word because that's the word that they want to use. But we're still talking about a man who has sex with a 9-year-old girl. So you're okay with all these other things about Islam and the reality of your religion and its history, but you'll put that to the side on the basis that there are some ambiguous statements that you think allude to something scientific, so you'll go with it.
Yeah. And by the way, I'm not drunk or something. I've got a cyst in my mouth and I'm tripping over this all the time. Because I just realized that I'm stumbling when I'm saying certain words. It sounds quite funny even to me.
If you say Muhammad did not intend to save those children from FAS, or all the Indian people from alcoholism,
No, you can't. First,
Hang
you
on a
have to
minute.
show that this is in there. You have to show that he wanted to do that before you can
Correct.
address this. Just
Yeah, it should be
going
in the
and saying,
Quran.
well, I'm sure that he wanted to do that, that is not enough.
No, and it needs to be in the Quran, right? If it said, for example, actually forbid more than one glass of alcohol because of this result with women and so
Exactly.
forth that you will happen, that
Exactly.
would be something. Of course, it doesn't do that. That's
So this
exactly
is
what we would
totally-
expect it to
yeah.
do.
Yeah, and it doesn't. So it's a pity TJump doesn't jump on this.
Then this falls under the definition of a coincidence. This is an unexpected, something was unintentional. You were intending to do something else. Maybe you saw some people doing their bar fight or something. Nah, I'm going to write my Quran. Yeah, this is not good. Yeah, alcohol's banned. And as a result, unexpectedly, accidentally, you saved millions of children from FAS.
He didn't save them.
a
That's the
coincidence.
point.
Let's
There
look at
was
some
an
more.
unintended result of this. Even if we granted him everything apart from it being a miracle, even if we granted that he saw this and he said what this guy claims, all of that's dubious and certainly can be strongly argued against. But even if we granted that, all that happened was there was an unintended result, because if he knew the result, he would have explicitly said the result. So it is an unintended result, nothing miraculous, nothing fancy here. That's why I say the bar is so low. This guy's basically tripping over his own feet here to try and climb to get over this incredibly low bar that he set for himself, and then pats himself on the back.
The thing that you need to consider here, I mean, this Muhammad was a great guy because he did not mention electricity anywhere in the Quran or in the Hadith or anywhere. Now, that proves that in those days, nobody was electrocuted. That's brilliant. Imagine all the lives saved because they weren't electrocuted, because he didn't invent electricity. He never mentioned it. You could argue like that as well.
More coincidences.
Nobody gets my joke.
Can you guys see my desktop?
No, we
Not right
can't.
now, brother.
Okay, so what we also know from history, so but the coincidences keep happening with the Quran. We also know that the Quran triggered what
30
is known
seconds.
as a scientific revolution. This is called the Golden Age of Islam. And let me read you a quote.
Yeah, the golden age. He has, or so far, it's been what, 32 minutes so far. He has not presented us with a single verse from the Quran, from the text itself. One. And he's immediately skipped 200, 300 plus years into the golden age. And then the first is, even scientists from that era recognize the Quran itself as a book full of mythology. There's even a scholar from that era who says that this is just myths.
This is hilarious.
From medievalhistory.net is that all Western advances in civil engineering, mathematics, chemistry, medicine, and astronomy were founded upon the medieval sciences of Islam. And so what we know, and the historians give credit to the Quran. It was holy, as we see from this reference over here. It was a holy text which placed a value on education, science, discovery, which brought us this. Okay, I'm sorry. Go ahead, please.
Okay, that's okay. All right, brother. All right, so Tom, you have 2 minutes to respond.
So Nadir just pretty much granted that there's nothing special about saying alcohol is bad.
Stops.
He's
Just a quick one. It was medievalhistory.net/Scientia, right? That was the link, right? Because I typed it in, that page is no longer available. You don't have permission to view this directory, right? So the page has been taken down, so we can't even check that. I just went to quickly have a look at what nonsense was being said there.
Excellent.
And it's a medieval biography. If you go to the main page there, that's poorly written, and you can't really see it because it's against this background that keeps recurring with like yellow writing, so you can't really make a lot out of this. I'm wondering if this is a
I think
Islamic website. I can't really
Dawah
tell
page.
yet.
I was going to say, one has to be careful as well with the advent of the internet and how easy it is to set up web pages and just put on their false claims and such. There is a tendency, I've seen it in other areas before, where you can set up a website, fill it with whatever propaganda that you want to, put any spurious name that you know that your audience or the reader is not going to go and do any research on, and therefore try and put some kind of pseudo validation on the points you're trying to raise via that kind of deception.
But let's just see what he says at the top there, right?
I was in a
One
battle for
major
2
fact
years
of
in
how-
Wikipedia.
Yeah, but let's just read that there. One major factor on how the Islamic Empire enjoyed such a blossoming of thought comes from Islam itself. Somewhat usually, many parts of the Islamic holy text place value on education and scientific discovery, regardless of the information's origin. Yeah, please, and he's quoting Kings and something or other there.
Generals.
That's just a massive vacuous claim unless you can substantiate. I mean, it sounds good to the gullible ear, but show us in the Quran where it tells you you should value education and scientific discovery.
Yeah, and this is not even English. Come on,
Yeah.
somewhat usually. What kind of a sentence structure is this?
Yeah.
And then the biomedical sciences of the Arabic Islamic world underwent remarkable development during the 8th and 13th century, a flowering of knowledge, intellect that later spread throughout Europe. No, this is wrong. We don't have humors. We
Yeah,
don't
they're
think
just
that honey
repeating themselves,
cures
aren't they?
TB and things like that. The scientific glory of the Arabic nation originated on the Arabian Peninsula in the 7th century when the preaching of the Prophet Muhammad united the Arab tribes and inaugurated the Muslim religion. This is nonsense. I mean, yeah, this is just diatribe.
Saying, well, not literally everyone. I mean, I guess the babies that were like 1 year old didn't know that it was bad for you, but clearly by everyone you don't mean literally everyone. Like every culture, every wise human being on the planet at the time knew this. Every wise human being on the planet knew it was bad pretty much ever. The Bible was actually right in that quote because alcohol is a sedative. It calms you down and decreases pain. It's a painkiller. So it does actually treat things too. So the Bible also knew alcohol is bad, and there are many examples of that in the Bible. So there's absolutely nothing significant about anything.
I'm sorry, I find that incredibly disingenuous. You as a moderator, now you put an ad in there for yourself? That for me is...
He's got to promote his own book, right, that nobody else wants to buy or read.
That's crazy. That is so disingenuous that, okay, I mean, the level of dishonesty in this guy is absolutely astonishing. By the way, he still hasn't sent me the book, right? Which he promised me 1.5 years ago. He still hasn't sent me the book.
He said he's just somehow going from a guy wrote alcohol bad in a book, therefore God. That's ridiculous. Like anyone can just write down alcohol bad. They don't need a God for this. Secondly, inspiration of a scientific revolution. Not relevant whatsoever. Like lots of things can inspire a scientific revolution. An apple falling from a tree inspired Newton to a scientific revolution. Does that mean that there was a God behind the apple? No. This is an appeal to consequence fallacy, which means that you're saying, there was a good consequence because they believed this, therefore it's true. Straight up, not fallacy. Fallacy doesn't work. No. So neither of the arguments that you're presented are even coherent. They're about as bad as the lights and colors prove God, Jesus guy. So
I'm not happy with this. Tom, you could have done better. Come on. I don't think that... I mean, the last debate that you had, you were much more on your feet thinking, like it was much better. You were more focused, you were more with it, you were sharper. Here, I think this time thing is somehow kicking you. I don't know what is happening, but you're not as sharp as you were the last time, really.
this is pretty ridiculous.
Okay, and all right, you had 30 seconds left. That's okay. All right, so Nadir, you have 2 minutes to respond.
Yeah, so basically, as you can see, he's submitting false information to everybody here. So let me correct him. He said everybody knew this was all poison. There's no facts to back up what he is saying. He's making it up, basically. He said the Bible got it right, actually. No, the Bible got it wrong, because the Bible said that it administered this drug to a general population. And within that general population, you have kids, you have pregnant women. And if you looked at the study, which I actually did present to you, they said you have to focus on the Christians because their religion allows drinking. So no, the Bible did not get it right. It did not.
So does Judaism. So does Judaism as well.
Oh, okay.
Not give a correct prescription here. Okay, so this is factually incorrect information. And not only is he just making stuff up, but he's now chasing after straw mans. He says, God wrote alcohol bad in the Bible, therefore God. That's not my argument. That's silly. Okay. This is a straw man argument.
That's not what he said.
And
Just
they said,
stop it there,
good
Stops. Yeah, I mean, I think he glossed over it. I think it's better as well if you lay it out. Here's the claim that, as I understand it, that Nadir is doing about alcohol. Hey, this thing about alcohol was miraculous because people before either got it half right or half wrong or didn't get it correct. Muhammad predicted that or suggested, or it was told to him that this was a bad thing. It had more negative. There was some good, but it had more negative. Nobody else at the time got it that good. The only possible way this could have happened is if it was through God. So actually, if you break it down, Tom just condensed it into like one sentence. It's exactly what Nadir is saying. But because he left out the steps in between and he just went, claim conclusion without the middle steps, he thinks it's a straw man. I don't think he actually knows what a straw man is. He's probably heard the term, right? And he'll throw it out and he'll say factually incorrect. So there'll be these buzzwords of this, because this is all rhetoric, right? There's nothing of substance here, as we can see. And not even his shared screen is of any substance. So it's complete non-substantive. But he's got the buzzwords that if he throws that out enough times, he'll pat himself on the back, and Kenny and the rest of the people who are just hypnotized watching will think that he did a good job. None of us do. But I think, like you say, Tom could do a lot more in the substance here of breaking that down.
Now, we've hit 2 hours. I don't know, should we continue or should we do this
Maybe
next
do
time,
another
or
10
should we-
minutes and then we can stop. I think we started about 8:30 or give or take, somewhere around there. So we've been doing an hour and a half. So just maybe 10 more minutes and we call it a day.
Okay. The space button doesn't always work. I need to be here.
The Quran on this scientific, revolution that the Quran started. Therefore, it's true. It's a consequence fallacy. Only problem is that's not my argument. I don't even think he's in this discussion or debate but that's okay. I'm gonna do my best to explain to you. Here's my argument here. Okay, so the issue here is the issue of coincidence. Okay, when I'm bringing up the issue about the scientific history about triggering a scientific revolution, either Muhammad intentionally did it or did not intend to do it. If it's an unintended consequence of maybe he was doing something, but that couldn't have been his intention to do that, then this is yet another coincidence, which we are finding in the Quran. So now we have two coincidences. So the issue here is eventually this is going to get ridiculous, and we're going to be able to rule out if all this stuff is coincidence.
Okay, thank you, Nadir. And Tom, you have 2 minutes.
Yeah, so I just Googled it to prove Nadir wrong in 30 seconds. Yes, the Bible does reject alcohol. Say, don't drink alcohol in like multiple verses. It says, do not get drunk on wine, Ephesians 5. Wine is a mocker and beer is a brawler. Whoever's led astray of them is not wise, Proverbs 20. 1 Peter 4, 1 Timothy 5, Ecclesiastes 9. Like there's lots of these examples. Everybody knew alcohol is wrong. If Nadir just isn't aware that pretty much everyone in society knew alcohol is poison.
It's not that alcohol is wrong. It's the misuse of alcohol, not the alcohol per se. You can have a glass of wine, biblically speaking. It's the misuse of alcohol.
This is the point that TJump is now making, and now he's getting more concrete. And this is exactly the alley he should go down.
Literally, because you make it by rotting it. Then I think Nadir just needs to look up history a little bit, because this is literally a Donald Trump argument. Nobody knew alcohol was bad. Nobody knew alcohol was bad before Muhammad. Like, clearly not the case. Everybody knew alcohol was bad. So there's nothing spectacular about this whatsoever. This is just the most mundane, boring fact imaginable that someone said, don't drink alcohol. Like, I don't even know why he thinks this counts as evidence of anything other than, well, he could speak. Because he told people he didn't actually write it down, because that would be evidence he could write, which would be more than what Nadir has. So none of that's actually evidence, and neither is a second point that, again, causing scientific revolution, appeal to consequences, not actually evidence of anything. Muhammad didn't actually present any scientific evidence of any kind. So if some people were inspired by the Quran to look into science and then cause a scientific revolution, Muhammad didn't do that. Those other people did. Just like God caused a scientific revolution for Newton when he thought that the planets were organized by God, but it wasn't the God that did it.
Just stop there. So on the first one, I think, again, that's why I think if he had subjected it to the criteria and then given a prediction or a miracle that would have been spectacular, that would, to me, is a lot more effective than what he's doing here. On the second point, though, that's slightly better, but he could have also done it with, because basically the idea with a supposed golden age, which is highly disputable to say the least, but if we just take it charitably for a moment, the inference is that people were inspired by the Quran, and this must be a miracle. And as Thomas pointing out, if it were the case, the idea of, the apple falling on Newton's head, for example, he was inspired by an apple. Was that also supernatural? Because all the claim is that they were inspired by the Quran, and had it not been for the Quran, presumably, they wouldn't have been inspired. And because the Quran was from God, therefore God inspired them. But people like Newton, who certainly by who's that physicist, the public intellectual in the US who talks about it, Neil deGrasse Tyson, reckons that Newton is probably one of the smartest, if not the smartest human that ever lived, right?
Yeah.
By the age of 26, he invented calculus, something that virtually none of us could learn even. It's incredibly complex, although he still believed in alchemy and all kinds of other things, and he might have even been considered a heretic, Christian heretic as well. So there's all kinds of things, but in terms of the brilliance around that thing, was the apple supernatural as well? Because that's actually the inference that's going here. And so all of this being said, in no way is this supernatural. All we could say is, as Tom pointed out, is that maybe they had an interpretation, I would say an inaccurate interpretation. The Quran says, go and look out at the world. But all of that sort of stuff is entirely natural. Where's the miracle there? And the only tenuous link is that this is inspired. But other things inspired other people. No scientific miracle there.
Okay. All right, Nadir, you have 2 minutes to respond.
Oh, thanks. So what's happening here? He's just, he's submitting fallacious and false information.
It's a straw man. Let me show my desktop.
And now he's claiming that the Bible condemns alcohol. So let me just refute him with scientific fact.
He just
see why it's not good to appeal to the Bible? Because now he's going off track to put out a small fire as if it's something valuable.
And not only that, like TJump, he quoted some Bible verses, and now I like how he just sort of shimmies
where
and just goes to science.
Showed women are 50 times Muslim women are 50 times less likely to drink out to give birth to a.
He says, "Let me go to the Bible." I didn't know that this is what the Bible looks like.
Fetal alcohol baby. The same study said, in contrast, wine is a part of the communion of the Catholic faith, and abstinence is much less common among Catholics.
What the fuck is this guy doing? This has nothing to do with the Bible. It had nothing to do with Islam. It has nothing to do with the Quran. This is just talking about individual people. Jeepers creepers, what is wrong with this guy?
Study continues and say you've got to focus on the Christians because this is where we're going to find the fetal alcohol baby. So here's a question for Tom. He's just Googling here. If the Bible condemns alcohol, how do you explain that? And I can show you 2 or 3 different studies. All of them are focusing on the Christians. That doesn't make any sense. So anyways, he's just submitting false information.
The claim there is, hey, if Christianity outlaws it or says it's bad, how come there's all these bad people? Well, number one reason is because they're not killed or otherwise brutally injured or punished for drinking alcohol. If you have a severe punishment, people are less likely to take it, right? But all it means is that there are some people that maybe overindulge. That doesn't necessarily mean that it's a point against Christianity, because we'd use the same against him. Because some people are suicide bombers, does that impugn the whole of Islam? Well, clearly not. So pointing to the effects of certain number of people doing bad things doesn't necessarily mean that the religion is bad. You could just say that they were bad Catholics at best, right? But again, going back to the same thing, don't bring up these things about the Bible. Let's him go off on a tangent, and all of this is superfluous. It's trivial. It doesn't in any way, bring his, put his claims under the spotlight. You've got to stop doing these sort of things.
Thing is, see, I mean, at the end of the day, I'm getting so bored with this line of reasoning with alcohol, Christianity, and Islam that when you look at the Muslim world and the state of women in the Muslim world, then look at the state of women in the Western world, then why is it the Muslim world are fleeing to the Western world from the non-alcohol location to the alcohol-fueled location? If alcohol is so bad, then why are you fleeing to the lands where alcohol is consumed at such a rate? You know, why is that then? And then look at the state. So you're going by this doctors and baby fetuses and things like that. But let's look at the Muslim world and the state and the plight of women in Afghanistan, Iraq, and Somalia and places like that, Muslim-controlled countries. Then let's look at America, England, Europe, France, Spain, Portugal, and such places, and look at Western women where they do drink alcohol. You know, where's the equilibrium in all of this? Why is it the Muslim world are fleeing to the land of the kuffar, the wine consumers? That says enough. Conversation done.
There's lots of things that you can reply to this. You can always point out, well, doesn't the Quran prohibit the killing of innocent people? Well, 2 years ago, a Muslim plowed into a Christmas market. Were all those people guilty he killed? Hardly. So, you know, this is stupid. The thing is, it's 35 minutes that he's been talking, and there is not one single scientific claim being made yet.
At this point, and so he's chasing after straw man, but he's actually kind of giving me the rope to hang himself with here. He says, look, regarding
he's giving me the rope to hang himself with.
the scientific revolution which the Quran triggered, he says, Muhammad,
another claim, you have to show this.
Didn't do that. Other people did. You see, I'm glad you have said that, because what he's showing you is, Muhammad, that was not his intention. Well, if that was not intention, but yet it happened, then this is yet another coincidence that we are seeing in the Quran. And remember, coincidence is something unexpected to happen. But if you see it happening over and over and over again, then this cannot be a coincidence. So
stop there, please. How many? Let's be charitable again, just because we can still be charitable and show how absolutely ridiculous this is. Let's assume that all three of these quote coincidences had these positive side effects or unintended consequences. The claim is this couldn't possibly be the case. What's the argument? We've had three so far, I count three, that have had these. If we gave him everything, if we didn't argue with a single point and we took everything that he said as true, which I don't think there's anything, almost nothing that is substantial or true. But even if we took it all as true, there's three of them there. And you're claiming that this couldn't possibly be the case, that one guy over, let's again be charitable, 23 years, came up with certain criteria that had a positive consequence. This is what we talk about with having the bar so low. You're barely able to, you trip over it as you lift your foot 1 millimeter off the ground. This is the bar that he's got for himself. Stops, how long do you want to carry on? We've done another 10 minutes, so do you want to stop now or continue for a bit more? Or
I'm easy.
Chat, see what the other guys want to do.
We can look at it next time if you guys want.
Yeah, because the hour and 50 minutes, there isn't all of these guys. It then becomes Q&A. So, I mean, we could always stretch it to a part 3 if we get through the second part and people want to listen to the Q&A now, our review of that. But I think it probably ends up being about an hour, give or take, I think, between them. Might not even be that long. I can't remember.
But Rob, do we really need to show others how ridiculously stupid Nadir Ahmed is? How dishonest?
I think it's clear that he's utterly clueless and completely dogmatic. I think that the point is just to show any further tactics and also to comment on the other vacuous claims that he makes, right? Because these aren't the only ones. He will bring some other ones as far as I can remember. So that would be the reason, in my view, to deal with the other quote-unquote scientific claims so that we can put that to bed and then we don't have to deal with it again. We could just say, go watch these videos, right? We've done it.
So then should we do this again?
Yeah, let's do the second half next week then, if you guys are okay with that. And then we've got something.
I'll type here 39:30. This is how far we watched it. And then if we go next time, then we can go and continue this.
Yeah.
Oh boy, but this is tough. Really, this is tough. All right.
Yeah, I think we can each do a summary, I guess. My view is that obviously there's nothing substantial there. The bar, again, for Tom, you get much clearer in the beginning. It's the same thing we said on the other night when we were on my channel for Moster, is to get clear in the beginning on definitions, hold a criteria, and then measure that criteria throughout the discussion. And in this case, you could make it even stronger by presenting your or ours or my version of what I would think a miracle that would be actually quite, or something that would be certainly more persuasive than that. I'd have to really think hard. It was something that would be, incredibly persuasive in relation to the alcohol and this, because they're such mundane claims. There's nothing big about them. But his main claim is that all of these, all three so far, but again, you listen to the language, all of these things, as if he's given an entire book worth of them, when he's given three low-end ones that anybody can come up with. This couldn't have been coincidence. Yes, of course it can. And that's assuming that we grant you all the other nonsense that you've claimed without critiquing any of that. So, yeah, absolutely nothing there, but I hope the people got to see it. Yes, we are going after low-hanging fruit in this particular case, but hopefully we'll be done after the next show. So I'll leave it there for the other guys.
All right. Thank you very much, guys. If anybody in the chat, if anybody has another video that you would like to have critiqued, give it to us. I don't even know what else, because what we haven't done, and as far as themes goes, is there anything that we have missed? We've done slavery, have we done morality as such?
I mean, we've critiqued it on other videos, but we haven't delved into it with the Quranic verses maybe and critiqued it that way.
To show, because I made the video about Imran and I realized, guys, Muslim apologists, please stay away from morality, because you lose every single time, because there's no way that you can argue Islamic morality being positive in any which way. It's impossible. So like I said today, there's this positive sentence here in the Quran, but it's far and few between. Don't go there. Don't go and touch on morality, because you're going to lose. So don't do it. Okay, any other comments?
No.
I'm still waiting. I'm still waiting for a Quranic verse for Nadir to bring up.
And I'm still waiting for Boba to send me his book. So, yeah, what do you expect? All right, thank you very much, people in the chat. Thank you very much. I've noticed that you had a spirited conversation at times. That's good to see. So we shall see you next week. And by the way, this week I looked at the comments on last week's video, but there was nothing there of any consequence that I could not answer there and then. So if you want to join us on Discord, come on over and we'll just chat a little bit. I will close now with the Hadith of the week, which is by Bukhari, Volume 1, Book 5, number 282. And this must be the shortest Hadith in the entire book, because it's only one short sentence. The Prophet used to visit all his wives in one night, and he had 9 wives at that time.
Wow.
I think he just invented the quickie then.
Or maybe they were all in one room and he just said, "Hello, wives."
I'm just trying to understand what's the benefit of that. What do we learn from that? What's the point of that?
Yeah, it's trivial, isn't it? Like if a hadith said, "Hey, he breathed air this morning," or he drank some water. Well, thank you for the trivially useless information. Right?
Well, this thing, the Prophet had the stamina of a horse or something like this. I don't know. I've never had sex with a horse. I don't know the stamina.
I think 10, 20 men, something like that. 10 men. The sexual strength of 10
100 men. 100 men, because in heaven you're going to get the strength of 30 men. So
30 men.
you will never get more than Muhammad. You'll never get more than Muhammad.
If the night is 8 hours and you have 9 wives, how much time does that give you per wife? That's like 2.5 minutes or so.
I wish we could go back in time, right, in a time machine. If this guy existed, he was probably a fat, podgy guy that babbled some nonsense, and a few people, that were hoodwinked by him, and that was it, right? And then somebody afterwards, as was pointed out in the shadow of the sword, decided, he converted a few people that were, as gullible as any of the, some of them today. Let's just make as if he's somebody special, right? But he was probably somebody who, if he existed, which is questionable, was some guy that was utterly mundane, and you probably wouldn't have paid too much attention to him anyway. And you wouldn't want to, by the sounds of it, either. And if he was alive today, he'd be in a mental asylum as well, and probably be locked up for life.
Oh, definitely. I mean, people are coming saying that, what was it, Aisha was 18 or something when he had sex with her. That would mean that he was close to 70 and she was 18. So I don't know, it doesn't make it any better, I think, in my eyes anyway. All right, guys, let's leave it. We'll see you on Discord. I don't think I'm going to be there for long, but whatever. Or maybe I'll pop over to the Muslim side and see what they are up to. So, see you next week. Thank you very much for joining us here. And it's been a pleasure. See you next week. Good night.
See you next week. Good night.